You've been told to fight your anger, to hide your sadness, to run from your fears. But tell me, has that ever truly worked? The more you push away your pain, the stronger it seems to come back. The more you pretend to be fine, the heavier the mask feels on your face. And deep down, you know this weight is exhausting. But here's the truth, they never told you. Negative energy isn't something you have to fight. It isn't an enemy. It's something you can understand, transform, and finally release. And the teachings of the Buddha hold the key. For centuries, monks, sages, and seekers have used these teachings not just to survive their suffering, but to turn it into peace, clarity, and freedom. Imagine your mind like a lake. Right now it feels stormy waves of anger, ripples of fear, clouds of regret. But tonight, as you listen, those waters will begin to calm. The noise will fade. The stillness you've been searching for will rise naturally from within you. This isn't about pretending bad things don't exist. It's about learning the art of letting go, the wisdom of not clinging, the power of seeing your emotions for what they really are, temporary visitors, not permanent chains. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, prepare for a quiet transformation. Your heart will soften, your breath will deepen, and that heavy energy you've carried for far too long will begin to dissolve, like mist under the morning sunday. This isn't just another bedtime story. This is a journey into freedom. Are you ready? Let's begin. You've taken your first step into this journey. You've opened your heart to the possibility that all the heaviness you carry, anger, grief, doubt, does not have to define you. That in itself is a crack of light in the wall you've been trapped behind. Now, we move deeper. And here lies one of the most powerful truths in all of Buddhist wisdom. Everything you feel, no matter how heavy, no matter how sharp, is not solid. It has no permanent core. The fear, the shame, the resentment, they feel like iron chains, but when you truly look at them, they dissolve like smoke. This is the teaching of emptiness. And once you understand it, you begin to see your pain not as a prison, but as something you can finally walk through. What does it mean to say emotions are empty? It doesn't mean they are useless, nor does it mean you should ignore them. It means that they are not fixed, not unchangeable, not permanent. They arise, they burn bright for a moment, and they fade. Even the deepest wound in your heart has shifted, softened, or transformed over time. Think back to a heartbreak you thought would destroy you. In that moment, the grief seemed endless. But today, that storm is not the same. Maybe it has softened into a lesson. Maybe it has become a scar you can touch without pain. That is emptiness. The truth that emotions only exist because of conditions, because of thoughts, memories, hormones, words spoken, or silence received. When the conditions change, the emotion shifts. Without the conditions, the emotion cannot survive. Negative energy feels unbearable because we believe it is who we are. You say, "I am angry," and suddenly anger becomes your identity. You say, "I am worthless," and that thought becomes a cage around your soul. But the teaching of emptiness gently shows you the truth. Anger is not you. Sadness is not you. Anxiety is not you. These are passing visitors that arise in your house of consciousness, and when the conditions that feed them disappear, they too leave. The more you cling to them, the longer they linger. The more you recognize their empty nature, the quicker they fade. Think of fire. A flame burns only when there is fuel, oxygen, and heat. Remove one of these, and the flame dies instantly. Your emotions are like this. Anger burns only when it has the fuel of stories, the oxygen of memory, the heat of attention. When you stop feeding the flame, it cannot last. You don't need to smash it out with force. You simply need to see it for what it is, dependent, fleeting, not solid. That vision alone weakens its grip. And yet, when negative energy comes, your body tightens, your breath shortens, your mind begins its storm. You may think, "This is who I am, I will always be this way." But let yourself look deeper. In the middle of sorrow, there is a quiet awareness that notices the sorrow. That awareness is untouched. It is like the clear sky that remains, no matter how many clouds drift across it. The clouds of anger, jealousy, and despair may appear, but the sky itself never changes. This awareness is your true nature, and it is never broken. The Buddha's teaching of emptiness points you back to this. Consider this: if anger truly had a permanent self, it would never end. Once you felt it, you would be trapped in it forever. But you've seen it rise and fall countless times. It might return, but always in a different shape, never quite the same as before. That is proof of its emptiness. Sadness too shifts, sometimes deep and heavy, other times light like a drizzle. It cannot hold a fixed identity. Knowing this, you begin to loosen your grip. You stop saying, "This is me," and instead say, "This is here," a subtle shift, but one that opens a door to freedom. Emptiness does not mean absence. It means freedom from solidity. A glass is empty not because nothing exists inside, but because it can hold water, tea, or wine. Your emotions are the same. Because they are empty, they can transform. Anger can become clarity, fear can become caution that protects you, sorrow can become depth that teaches compassion. The emptiness of emotions is the very reason transformation is possible. If emotions were fixed, you would be trapped forever. But because they are empty, they can move, they can evolve, and you can let them go. This insight is not just for monks or philosophers. It is practical medicine for your daily life. The next time anger rises, do not call it yours. Watch it. Feel its shape. Notice how it shifts when you breathe, how it softens when you stop feeding it with old stories. The moment you see its impermanence, you are already freer than before. The same is true for fear. Fear feels like a solid wall in front of you. But look closer, and you realize it is made of mist. One breath, one step forward, and it begins to thin. You might ask, if emotions are empty, why do they hurt so much? Because emptiness doesn't mean they lack impact. It means they lack solidity. A dream can make you cry, though you wake and see it was only a dream. Emotions are dreams of the mind. They feel real, they move the heart. But when you awaken to their empty nature, their power weakens. You can still feel them, but you are no longer ruled by them. Negative energy feeds on ignorance. The ignorance that says, "This is permanent, this is who I am." The Buddha's wisdom slices through this ignorance. It whispers, "Look again. This feeling is not forever. This feeling is not you." Slowly, that whisper becomes truth you can feel in your bones. You stop drowning in sorrow and begin floating above it. You stop being crushed by anger and begin to hold it lightly in your hands, knowing it will pass. Think of waves on the ocean. They rise and crash with great force, but the ocean itself is vast and steady beneath them. Your mind is that ocean. Your emotions are only waves. Sometimes high, sometimes calm, but never permanent. And no matter how high they rise, they always fall back. The practice of emptiness is the remembering that you are not the wave, you are the ocean that holds it all. This understanding does not come all at once. It grows slowly, each time you see an emotion arise and fade. Each time you remind yourself, "This is not who I am, this is simply passing." With practice, even the heaviest energy begins to feel lighter. And here is the most liberating part. When you see the emptiness of emotions, you stop fighting them. You no longer need to push them away, hide them, or fear them. You let them arise, let them play out, and let them go, just like watching clouds drift across the sky. In this way, emptiness is not cold or detached. It is compassionate. It allows you to hold your pain gently, without being consumed by it. It allows you to see that others, too, are bound by fleeting storms of emotion. And in that recognition, compassion blossoms. You realize that just as your anger is empty, so is theirs. Just as your sorrow is not permanent, neither is theirs. And suddenly, instead of isolation, there is connection. This is the quiet miracle of emptiness. By seeing the insubstantial nature of negative energy, you free yourself from its chains. You stop clinging to what hurts. You stop building an identity around what passes. You return, again and again, to the clear sky of awareness that is never broken. And as you let this truth settle into your heart tonight, feel the weight loosening, feel the chains falling, feel the breath deepening. You are not your anger. You are not your fear. You are not your sorrow. These are only waves, only passing smoke. Beneath them, your mind is vast, steady, luminous. And when you know this, truly know it, the negative energy that once controlled you loses its power. Rest now in that truth. Let the emptiness of emotions cradle you into stillness. And as you drift deeper, know this: the storm cannot last, the waves cannot hold, the sky is always waiting. And in that sky, you are already free. You've seen how emotions dissolve when you look closely, how they have no lasting core, how they vanish when you stop calling them yours. Yet, even knowing this, the waves of anger or sorrow can still feel overwhelming in daily life. The heart understands emptiness, but the mind still struggles to hold it. This is where Zen steps in with a teaching that cuts through confusion with striking clarity. The mind is like a mirror. Whatever passes before it is reflected perfectly, but nothing sticks. The mirror shows the fire, but it is not burned. It shows the storm, but it does not get wet. To live with such a mind is to move through life without being stained by negativity, even when it appears again and again. The metaphor of the mirror is not about cold detachment. It is about clarity and freedom. Think of how a mirror receives light, faces, shadows, and yet the moment they pass, the mirror remains untouched. The reflection does not leave a mark. This is the true power of awareness. Your mind, in its deepest nature, has the same quality. It reflects what arises: joy, sorrow, anger, fear. But at its core, it is never damaged by them. What causes suffering is not the reflection itself, but the way you chase it, cling to it, or fight against it. When anger appears, the ordinary mind reacts instantly. It identifies with the anger, sharpens it with memory, and fuels it with stories until it consumes the whole being. But in the mirror-like mind, anger is just seen. It arises, it is reflected clearly, and it passes without leaving residue. The difference lies in whether you become the reflection or allow it to come and go. This is not about denial. The reflection is still there, fully acknowledged, but without ownership. Just as the mirror does not say, "I am the fire," you too can stop saying, "I am the anger." This way of seeing does not suppress emotion. Suppression is like covering the mirror with a cloth, so you don't see the reflection. But the reflection is still there, hidden yet active. True reflection is open, fearless, unafraid to show what is present. When sorrow comes, the mirror shows sorrow. When joy comes, the mirror shows joy. When bitterness comes, it too is reflected. Nothing is rejected, nothing is clung to. And in that openness, each reflection loses its power to bind. Zen masters often spoke of the mirror to describe the nature of mind. Huineng, the sixth patriarch of Chan, warned against polishing the mirror endlessly, thinking one day it will become pure. He pointed out that the mirror is already pure. What needs polishing is not the mirror itself, but the delusions that prevent us from seeing its clarity. This means that your awareness right now already has the capacity to reflect without clinging. The practice is simply to remember it. The more you learn to live with this mirror-like awareness, the less negativity can control you. Consider sorrow. In ordinary experience, sorrow lingers because you keep replaying the causes, reliving the wounds. The reflection of sorrow stays long after the original event has passed because the mind grasps it. But in the mirror-like state, sorrow is just acknowledged as sorrow. No story, no judgment, no replay. It comes, it is known, it fades. Without fuel, it cannot remain. This teaching is not abstract philosophy. It can be practiced here and now. The next time a wave of irritation rises, notice the instant it appears. Instead of naming it my anger, let it be reflected as just anger, appearing in the space of awareness. Watch how it moves in the body, the heat, the tension, the pulse, and let it be mirrored. No pushing it away, no grasping. Stay still, and the anger will move on. The mirror remains. Zen practice often points to simplicity. The mirror is not decorated, not distorted, not painted with preferences. It just shows what island. This simplicity is liberation. To see clearly without clinging is to break the chain of cause and effect that turns a small irritation into a heavy burden. Without this clarity, a single word from someone can echo in your mind for hours. With the mirror-like mind, the word arises, is reflected, and dissolves instantly. There is also a profound humility in this way of seeing. The mirror does not claim ownership of what it reflects. It does not say, "This beautiful face is mine," or "This ugly shadow belongs to me." It shows, and it lets go. To live like this is to stop clinging to praise and blame, success and failure, joy and sorrow. These are all reflections. They appear, they disappear, but they are never yours to hold. Negativity loses its grip because you no longer identify with what passes across the surface. At the same time, the mirror reflects everything equally. It does not favor one face over another, one scene over another. In the same way, awareness does not discriminate. Anger and joy are both seen. Fear and peace are both reflected. This equality cuts through judgment, which is often the root of suffering. You say, "I should not feel this," and instantly the reflection becomes heavier. But the mirror mind does not judge. It shows what is present without resistance. This lack of resistance is the key to freedom. The more you practice this, the more subtle its effects. A moment of jealousy may still arise, but instead of spiraling into comparison, it appears as just a flash of thought. A pang of regret may still come, but without stories, it fades in seconds. Over time, you begin to notice that negativity itself loses its solidity. Reflections cannot bind you when you see them as reflections. This is why Zen teachers often said, "Let thoughts come and go, just don't serve them tea." You do not need to fight the reflections, nor invite them to stay. Let them appear in the mirror of mind, and let them fade. This simple practice becomes a shield against negativity without hardening the heart. You remain open, clear, present. Awareness as a mirror also reveals something deeper. The reflection never alters the mirror itself. The most violent image does not crack it. The most radiant image does not improve it. The mirror remains untouched. Your mind, in its deepest nature, is the same. Beneath all reflections, there is a clarity that negativity cannot harm. When you rest in that clarity, you discover a freedom that does not depend on the presence or absence of emotions. Daily practice makes this truth alive, whether through sitting meditation, mindful breathing, or simply pausing in the middle of conflict. You can return to the mirror. Each time you reflect without clinging, you strengthen the habit of freedom. Over time, this becomes natural. Life still brings waves of experience, but you no longer drown. You stand in clarity, letting everything pass through. This clarity is not cold indifference. It is full presence. The mirror does not reject the reflection. It shows it fully, with precision. In the same way, awareness that reflects without clinging allows you to meet anger, sorrow, and pain completely without being consumed. This is true compassion. To see clearly without judgment is to open the door to understanding, both for yourself and for others. The more deeply this understanding settles, the more you notice its effects beyond personal emotions. Relationships change because you no longer react blindly to others' negativity. Their anger may appear, but you reflect it without being hooked. Their sorrow may spill out, but you do not drown with them. Instead, you remain steady, present, and able to respond wisely. Negativity thrives on reactivity. The mirror mind starves it by refusing to grasp. Each reflection passes, leaving no trace. Over time, the mind grows lighter, freer, less entangled in the web of reaction. You no longer carry yesterday's anger into today's conversations. You no longer let sorrow from years ago poison the present moment. Life becomes fresh again because you are meeting each reflection as it is, without dragging the past along. This way of living does not eliminate emotion. The reflections will always appear, but it removes the suffering that comes from clinging to them, and that is the heart of freedom. Not the absence of feeling, but the presence of clarity. To live with a mind like a mirror is to walk through the world unstained, reflecting fully, releasing instantly. And as this truth deepens, you begin to sense something even more profound. The mirror not only reflects, it reveals. By reflecting without clinging, you begin to see the patterns beneath the emotions. You see how anger arises from wounded pride, how sorrow flows from unmet expectations, how fear grows from attachment. The mirror shows not only the surface, but the roots, and with roots exposed, healing becomes possible. So tonight, as you rest in these words, let your mind soften into that mirror-like state. Let whatever arises be reflected, fully seen, fully allowed, and then let it go. Do not grasp, do not resist. Trust the clarity beneath the reflections. In that clarity, you are untouched. In that clarity, negativity cannot bind you. And in that clarity, freedom is already here. You have seen how the mirror of the mind reflects anger and sorrow without becoming stained. That clarity brings freedom, yet the path of release does not end with stillness alone. There are practices that move energy directly, transforming heaviness into calm, agitation into flow, despair into subtle strength. One of the least understood, yet profoundly powerful, is the practice of mudras, sacred hand gestures found in the depths of Buddhist ritual. They are more than symbolic signs. They are living channels of energy that reshape the way emotions move through the body, dissolving negativity at its roots. The human body is not only physical flesh and bones, it is a network of channels where breath, thought, and subtle energy are woven together. Every movement you make carries intention, and intention itself leaves an imprint on how you feel. Your hands, in particular, are extensions of the heart and mind. They carry nerves, pathways, and energy centers that connect to deeper layers of your being. When you fold, press, or shape them in certain ways, something within shifts. This is the alchemy of mudra, using the simplest of actions, positioning the fingers and palms to unlock states of peace and clarity that words alone cannot reach. Most people dismiss mudras as mere cultural ornaments, decorative positions in statues of the Buddha or monks in meditation. Yet each gesture carries centuries of refinement, designed through practice and experience. A mudra is not an empty symbol. It is a key. The key opens a subtle door between mind and body, teaching you how to guide energy rather than letting it scatter. And when energy is guided, negativity loses the power to dominate. Take, for example, the dhyana mudra, the gesture of meditation. Both hands rest in the lap, right over left, thumbs lightly touching. At first glance, it seems simple, almost ordinary. Yet the position creates a circle of energy, closing the loop between left and right, balancing the body's polarity. When you hold it, the breath naturally deepens, the mind settles, and agitation has less room to grow. The circle formed by the thumbs becomes a reminder of wholeness, the space where nothing is missing. In moments of anxiety, this mudra grounds the restless current, redirecting it into stillness. There is also the abhaya mudra, the gesture of fearlessness, one hand raised at shoulder level, palm facing outward. The posture speaks without words. There is no danger here, nothing to fear. It is said the Buddha himself used this mudra to calm others in moments of terror. When you raise your hand in this way, the body remembers strength, and fear softens. The palm facing outward signals a release, as though pushing away harmful energy. It does not fight fear aggressively, but transforms it into calm assurance. In practice, this mudra teaches the nervous system to shift from threat to safety, from contraction to openness. Another gesture, the Varada mudra, speaks of generosity and release. The palm is extended downward, fingers open. It expresses the willingness to give, to let go, to release clinging. For dissolving negativity, this mudra is powerful because so much suffering comes from holding tightly, holding grudges, holding regrets, holding fear of loss. The open hand, extended downward, trains the body to feel the energy of release, and release is freedom. There is also the Bhumisparsha mudra, the earth-touching gesture, where the right hand extends down with fingers touching the ground. This is the mudra the Buddha used under the Bodhi tree when Mara, the embodiment of illusion and negativity, came to challenge him. By touching the earth, the Buddha called it as witness, anchoring his resolve in something greater than personal struggle. Practicing this mudra brings a sense of grounding, reminding you that no storm of negativity can uproot the vastness of the earth beneath your feet. It dissolves fear by connecting you to stability that does not waver. Mudras do not work by magic. Their power lies in the subtle alignment of body, mind, and energy. When you assume a gesture, you are training attention. The hand posture becomes a physical mantra, repeating silently, "Be calm, let go, release fear, stay grounded." Over time, the nervous system learns to associate the gesture with the state it calls forth. Just as certain songs can evoke deep emotions instantly, certain mudras become anchors for peace, clarity, and freedom. But mudra practice goes even deeper than association. It touches the reality that energy flows through the body like currents through rivers. In yogic and Buddhist traditions, these currents are called nadis, or channels. The fingers are endings of these channels, each connected to different qualities of energy. By pressing them together or shaping them in certain ways, you redirect the flow. A blocked current of anger can be softened into openness. A restless current of anxiety can be guided into balance. This is why monks hold mudras for long periods during meditation, not for display, but because the gesture itself helps purify and stabilize the mind. Negative energy often takes root in the body before it explodes in the mind. The clenched fist of anger, the trembling hand of fear, the restless tapping of anxiety, these are already mudras, but unconscious ones. They reinforce negativity by locking the body into its pattern. Conscious mudra practice reverses this. Instead of the hand acting out tension, it becomes a deliberate tool for release. The same hands that clench in rage can open in generosity. The same fingers that tremble in fear can rest in the circle of meditation. By shifting the body, you shift the mind. There is a hidden wisdom here. The body does not lie. You can tell yourself you are calm, but if your hands are restless, your nervous system knows otherwise. By starting with the hands, Mudras bypass the endless loops of thought and touch the core directly. The gesture itself becomes the teacher, showing the mind how to settle without needing words or logic. This is why mudra practice can feel so transformative. It speaks the language of the body, and the body carries the mind along. For those who carry heavy negativity, mudras offer a practice that is both subtle and powerful. When anger rises, instead of shouting or suppressing, place your hands in dhyana mudra. Let them rest, let the circle close, and feel the fire calm. When fear grips the chest, raise the palm in abhaya mudra. Let the body declare safety, and let the heart follow. When sorrow lingers, touch the earth with bhumisparsha mudra, grounding yourself in a strength that cannot be shaken. These gestures do not erase emotions instantly, but they shift the energy so that emotion no longer controls you. The beauty of mudras is that they require no special tools, no elaborate rituals. Your hands are always with you. The gestures can be practiced in silence, in meditation, or even discreetly in daily life. They become companions, quiet reminders that you are not helpless against negativity. With each practice, the body learns, and with learning, transformation becomes natural. Mudra practice also connects you with a lineage. For centuries, monks, practitioners, and seekers have sat with these gestures, allowing them to reshape inner life. When you hold a mudra, you are not alone. You are joining countless others who have touched the same gesture in their darkest nights and found light. This shared practice carries a subtle strength, a reminder that the path of release is not only yours, but part of a human journey toward freedom. What begins as a simple hand gesture deepens over time into a profound shift. At first, it may feel awkward or symbolic, but as you continue, the body remembers, the mind aligns, and negativity loosens its grip. You begin to see that every clenched hand can open, every trembling gesture can find stillness, every restless tapping can dissolve into peace. The alchemy of mudra is not about mysticism, it is about transformation through presence, about reshaping energy with awareness until even the heaviest weight feels lighter. So as you move deeper on this journey, let your hands become guides. Let them remind you that release is possible not only in thought, but in the very fabric of your being. With each gesture, you invite clarity, you invite balance, you invite freedom. And in that invitation, the dark currents of negativity lose their power, replaced by the steady flow of peace that has always been waiting within you. You have seen how even the smallest gesture of the hands can redirect energy, soften anger, and open pathways of peace. The body speaks a language older than words, and when used with awareness, it dissolves what once felt unbearable. Yet there is an even deeper medicine, one that requires no movement at all. It is found not in gesture, not in sound, but in the absence of both. This is the practice of noble silence, mourner, a silence that is not emptiness, but a living presence, a silence that heals the mind by stopping the endless storm of inner chatter. Most people fear silence. They rush to fill it with noise, conversation, or distraction. When silence arrives, the mind panics because without noise, it is forced to face itself. But the silence of Buddhist practice is not absence or avoidance. It is deliberate, purposeful, chosen. It is the silence that holds you steady while thoughts rise and fall like waves. In this silence, mental turbulence loses its strength. The constant narration in your head begins to weaken, and the toxic stories you repeat to yourself about not being enough, about being wrong, about being trapped begin to dissolve. When you enter noble silence, you are no longer feeding the mind's addiction to sound. Every argument, every regret, every fantasy has its life because you keep replaying it in words. Words inside, words outside. But silence cuts the chain. It interrupts the loop before it can build momentum. In silence, thoughts are not pushed away, but they cannot cling. They come, they fade, they leave no trace, like footprints on the shore washed away by the tide. This silence is medicine because the greatest suffering does not come from events themselves, but from the constant commentary you place upon them. Something happens, and the mind begins its chatter. Why me? What if? Always. Never. Again and again. Each word adds weight. Each phrase deepens the wound. But in noble silence, there is no commentary, only the raw presence of what island, and presence without commentary, is bearable. Even pain, when stripped of the stories around it, becomes lighter. Buddhist monks have long practiced silence as a way of breaking through delusion. Not only outer silence refraining from speech, but inner silence, quieting the need to label and explain. This does not mean suppressing thought, but recognizing thought as unnecessary noise. The discipline of mourner is not mute stillness, but mindful stillness. It is choosing to refrain so that clarity can arise. In daily life, silence begins simply. Choosing not to reply to every provocation, choosing not to add fuel to conflict with words, choosing to pause before speaking. Each pause is a doorway. In that pause, the heat of anger cools, the urge to lash out fades, the energy of resentment dissipates. Silence gives the space where reactivity cannot grow. Without silence, negativity multiplies. With silence, it loses oxygen. But silence does more than neutralize conflict. It becomes a direct practice of returning home. When you sit quietly, without speaking, without seeking distraction, the mind first resists. It shouts louder, it throws thoughts at you. This is the turbulence rising. But if you stay, if you hold to silence, the storm eventually passes. What remains is a spaciousness deeper than thought, a calm that does not depend on conditions. This calm is not something you create. It was always there, hidden beneath the noise. Noble silence is the key that reveals it. In silence, the senses sharpen. You notice the breath, the beating of the heart, the subtle sounds around you. Life feels more vivid, more real. And in that vividness, the toxic weight of inner stories begins to fade. Anxiety often thrives because you are trapped in imagined futures. Guilt thrives because you are replaying past mistakes. Both require words, constant narration. Silence pulls you into the present, where neither past nor future has control. Silence also teaches humility. When words are removed, the ego loses one of its strongest weapons. You no longer need to defend, explain, or prove yourself. You simply are. And in being, the ego's grip loosens. The craving for validation fades. This humility is not weakness, it is strength, because it shows that your worth is not bound by speech or by how others see you. You discover that you are complete even without explanation. The discipline of silence has been part of countless traditions because it cuts to the heart of suffering. When the Buddha was confronted with certain unanswerable questions about the origin of the universe, about what lies beyond death, he often remained silent. That silence was not ignorance. It was wisdom, showing that some questions are only traps of the mind. By refusing to feed them, he pointed directly to freedom. In the same way, when your mind asks, "Why am I like this? Why can't I escape?" Silence is often the truest answer. Not because there is no answer, but because the question itself is the trap. Silence becomes a shield against toxic chatter, not by pushing it away, but by refusing to amplify it. You do not need to wrestle each thought. You simply stop giving it your voice. The thought arises, but you do not repeat it, not even internally. You return to the breath, to the space of silence, and the thought fades. Each time you do this, the habit of clinging weakens. Over time, silence becomes your default state, and words become tools, not masters. In relationships, silence can be even more powerful. Not the cold silence of withdrawal, but the noble silence that listens deeply. When you remain silent while another speaks, you give them the gift of true attention. Without rushing to respond, you hear not only the words but the heart behind them. This kind of silence heals. It turns conflict into understanding, distance into connection. It shows that silence is not emptiness, but presence in its purest form. Silence also has a cleansing effect on energy. Words scatter energy outward. Constant chatter drains the mind, leaving you restless and depleted. In silence, energy gathers inward, becoming steady. This gathered energy heals the nervous system, balances emotions, and restores clarity. This is why, after a period of silence, even a short one, the mind feels lighter, refreshed. It is not absence, but replenishment. The practice of silence can be cultivated in simple ways. Setting aside time each day to be without words, even for a few minutes. Walking in silence, eating in silence, sitting in silence. Turning off the noise of devices, the constant input of information. In these moments, the mind learns to rest. At first it may rebel, but over time it begins to crave silence, to return to it as naturally as one returns to breath. There is also a deeper level of silence, silence of the heart. This is when not only words, but judgments, comparisons, and inner commentary are released. To meet someone without inner chatter, without labeling, without categorizing, is to meet them truly. To face your own experience without commentary is to face life directly. This silence is radical because it strips away all filters. What remains is raw reality, free from the cage of thought. Noble silence does not mean silence forever. Speech has its place. Words can heal, guide, and connect. But words used without silence become empty noise. Silence teaches you to value speech, to use it with care. It is said that when you cultivate silence, your words become like jewels, rare, precious, placed with intention. In this way, silence does not erase expression, but refines it. The medicine of silence also works in the deepest struggles. Depression, anxiety, grief, all are magnified by constant mental noise. When silence is practiced, even these heavy states become lighter. Not because the pain disappears instantly, but because the endless commentary weakens. In silence, pain is felt directly, without the added layers of "this will never end" or "I cannot bear this." Stripped of commentary, pain is still there, but it is not overwhelming. It is just sensation, just energy moving through. This shift alone can save a life. Silence is also a preparation for death. At the end, when words fade, silence remains. Those who have practiced noble silence carry with them a familiarity, a comfort in that stillness. They are not afraid of the absence of words, because they have lived in it already. For them, silence is not an end, but a homecoming. So as you move from gesture into stillness, let silence become your medicine. Let it wash over the toxic chatter, cool the fires of anger, soften the grip of fear. Let it be a shield, a refuge, a guide. Do not fear it, welcome it. For in silence, the deepest truths are revealed. Beneath the noise of thought, beneath the weight of negativity, there is always a space of quiet waiting. Step into that space, and you will know. Silence itself is freedom. Silence has shown its medicine, the way it untangles the knots of thought and allows space for healing to rise. But silence alone is not the whole path. Life continues, and with every step, every glance, every word, something subtle is being shaped. The mind leaves behind traces. The heart leaves behind marks. These traces do not disappear into nothing. They accumulate, they weave together, and they shape what comes next. This is karma, not fate, not punishment, but the natural echo of your actions and reactions. And while great choices leave visible marks, it is the smallest daily reactions that quietly shape the cycles of negativity you experience. Most people think of karma as a distant result of great deeds or great mistakes. But karma is not far away. It is near, forming in every small movement of thought and intention. The slight tightening of your jaw when insulted, the sharp tone in a careless reply, the silent resentment that lingers even when you say nothing, all of these are seeds. They may seem insignificant in the moment, but they settle into the soil of the mind, and from them patterns grow. Negativity does not usually come in grand storms. It comes in drips, in drops, in micro-reactions repeated day after day. The irritation at traffic, the envy at someone's success, the dismissal of your own worth, these tiny moments of clinging and aversion accumulate like dust. A single speck of dust is nothing, but left untouched, day after day, it builds into a thickness that clouds the whole surface. This is how karmic weight gathers, silently, without you even noticing. When these micro-reactions pile up, they form habits. A thought of anger repeated becomes a mood. A mood repeated becomes a trait. A trait repeated becomes a destiny. Karma is simply this process, the weaving of repeated reactions into patterns that then dictate how you see, how you feel, and how you act. In this way, your present moment is always both the fruit of past seeds and the planting ground for future ones. Breaking the cycle begins with awareness. Not grand vows or dramatic changes, but noticing the tiny movements of mind that create your world. The sharp thought that says, "I'm not good enough." The subtle blame toward another. The quiet tightening when plans change. Each of these is a karmic imprint, small but powerful when repeated. To see them as they happen is the first act of freedom. Once awareness is present, you can choose differently. The next time irritation arises, you can pause instead of feeding it. That pause alone interrupts the karmic chain. Instead of adding another layer of negativity, you plant the seed of patience. The next time jealousy stirs, you can breathe and recognize it as passing energy rather than solid truth. That recognition plants the seed of equanimity. Slowly, moment by moment, you change the soil. Negativity weakens, not because it is destroyed, but because it is not fed. The Buddha often described karma not as a punishment, but as a natural law, like gravity. What you release into the world through thoughts, words, or deeds returns in some form. Throw anger, and anger echoes back. Throw kindness, and kindness ripples outward. But here is the subtle truth. Even if no one else hears your angry thought, it still shapes you. The karmic imprint begins inside, long before it reaches the world outside. This is why inner work is as vital as outer action. Every unspoken thought matters. Every silent judgment matters. They are all seeds. Negativity thrives because micro-reactions often go unnoticed. You see the storm, but not the raindrops. By training yourself to notice the drops, you prevent the storm from forming. This is the essence of mindfulness, not just watching the breath, but watching the subtle ways you react to each moment. Do you tense when criticized? Do you harden when ignored? Do you glow with pride when praised? These micro-reactions are karma in motion. Seeing them clearly is the first step to reshaping them. Breaking cycles also requires understanding that every reaction has momentum. A harsh word today may not ruin a relationship, but repeated harshness erodes trust over time. A single act of self-doubt may not paralyze you, but repeated self-doubt builds into a cage. Karma accumulates not in dramatic bursts, but in repetition. This is why the smallest change, repeated consistently, transforms destiny. One pause instead of anger, one breath instead of complaint, one kind thought instead of bitterness. Each is small, but repeated, they turn the tide. It is also important to see how collective karma forms. A family, a workplace, a community, all are shaped by repeated micro-reactions. In a family where criticism outweighs encouragement, negativity becomes the atmosphere. In a workplace where gossip thrives, distrust grows as the karmic result. In a culture where fear dominates, aggression multiplies. Karma is not only individual, it is shared. Breaking the cycle means not only watching your own reactions, but recognizing how they ripple outward into the lives of others. One of the most powerful practices for shifting karma is restraint. Restraint does not mean suppression. It means consciously holding back from releasing a reaction that would plant a seed of harm. The moment you feel anger rising, you pause. The pause is the seed of freedom. In that pause, the karmic chain is interrupted, and a new possibility opens. Restraint is not weakness, it is strength, because it breaks the automatic repetition of harm. Over time, this builds new karmic patterns of patience and clarity. Another essential practice is replacement. When you notice a negative micro-reaction, you don't just stop it, you replace it with something healing. If the mind starts to complain, you replace it with gratitude. If envy arises, you replace it with joy for another's success. If irritation grows, you replace it with compassion for the other's struggle. Each replacement plants a new seed, and over time, the new seeds grow stronger than the old ones. Karma also teaches responsibility. Every reaction is your choice. The mind likes to blame circumstances, but karma shows that how you respond is always within your hands. You cannot control the words others speak, but you can control whether you repeat them in anger or release them in silence. You cannot control every loss, but you can control whether loss becomes bitterness or depth. This responsibility is not a burden, but a liberation, because it means you are not trapped. The future is not fixed. It is shaped by what you plant now. To deepen this practice, notice not only obvious negativity, but also subtle habits. Sarcasm may seem harmless, but repeated, it plants seeds of cynicism. Self-criticism may feel like motivation, but repeated, it builds despair. Even small acts of neglect, failing to listen fully, failing to care for your body, failing to rest, are karmic imprints. The law is impartial. Every seed matters. To cultivate freedom, you must care even for the smallest seeds. Over time, as you practice watching and reshaping micro-reactions, you begin to feel lighter. The heaviness that once seemed permanent dissolves because you are no longer carrying the weight of accumulated negativity. Each pause, each replacement, each act of restraint clears dust from the mirror of the mind. And as the dust clears, clarity shines naturally. The cycle of negativity is broken not by one great act, but by countless small shifts. Karma is built moment by moment, and freedom is also built moment by moment. To see this is to step into true power. No moment is wasted, because every moment plants a seed. And when seeds of clarity, compassion, and patience are planted again and again, the garden of your life transforms. So, as you move forward, carry this truth. Silence has taught you to rest, mudras have taught you to guide energy, and now karma shows you that every reaction is a seed. Do not underestimate the smallest seed. From it, entire forests grow. From a single pause, a whole life can change. By tending carefully to these small daily reactions, you are no longer trapped by negativity. You become the gardener of your own freedom. You have seen how karma is shaped not by grand gestures but by the smallest seeds, how every reaction plants a future that eventually returns to you. That truth teaches responsibility, but it also reveals an even deeper opportunity. What if negative energy itself could be turned into nourishment instead of poison? What if pain, sorrow, and anger were not only something to avoid, but raw material you could transform into healing? This is the secret of Tonglen, a Tibetan practice often described as breathing in the suffering of others and sending out compassion. Yet its depth goes beyond compassion. It is also a way of recycling negativity itself, using it as fuel for clarity, strength, and wisdom. At first, the practice seems counterintuitive. The ordinary mind recoils at suffering. It avoids pain, rejects discomfort, resists anything unpleasant. Tonglen reverses that habit. Instead of pushing away, it invites you to breathe in what is dark, heavy, or toxic. On the in-breath, you take it fully into awareness. Then, on the out-breath, you send out light, healing, peace. What makes this powerful is not that you are absorbing pain literally, but that you are dismantling the reflex of aversion. You are breaking the pattern that feeds karma, the habit of pushing away negativity and thereby strengthening it. To practice in this way is to discover that negativity has no permanent nature. It can be transformed in the furnace of awareness. Just as compost turns waste into fertile soil, Tonglen turns the weight of suffering into strength. Breathing in the pain of the world does not crush you. Instead, it breaks the illusion that you must be separate, untouched, defended. It reveals that the mind has the capacity to face darkness and turn it into light. The first level of Tonglen is simple. You notice your own suffering, the tightness in the chest, the heaviness of sadness, the fire of anger. Instead of running from it, you breathe it in. You allow it to fill awareness fully, without denial. Then, as you breathe out, you release compassion toward yourself. Not pity, not indulgence, but a warm acceptance. This alone changes everything. Because most suffering is magnified by resistance. By breathing it in, you cut resistance. By breathing out compassion, you soften the wound. From here, the practice expands. You begin to breathe not only for yourself, but for others. When you feel pain, you remember that countless beings feel the same pain. Your breath becomes a bridge. On the in-breath, you take in not only your sorrow, but the sorrow of all who share it. On the out-breath, you send out relief, comfort, clarity. In this way, your own suffering becomes the key to empathy. Instead of isolating you, it connects you to all beings. But Tonglen is not only about compassion in the ordinary sense. It is about alchemy. Each breath becomes an act of transformation. The heavy energy of grief, breathed in, becomes the exhale of calm. The sting of anger, breathed in, becomes the exhale of patience. The burn of envy, breathed in, becomes the exhale of joy for others. What was once toxic becomes healing. This reverses the entire cycle of karma. Instead of planting seeds of aversion, you plant seeds of transformation. The deeper wisdom here is that negative energy does not need to be destroyed. It can be used. Just as fire can burn or warm, negativity can consume or transform, depending on how it is met. Tonglen trains you to meet it in a way that transforms. This is why it is said to be the practice of warriors, not warriors who fight, but warriors who face suffering without retreat. To work with Tonglen beyond compassion is to see it as energy practice. On the inhalation, you are not poisoning yourself but opening the heart wide enough to hold even darkness. The breath becomes a crucible. Within awareness, the heaviness dissolves. On the exhalation, what remains is clarity, love, peace. This cycle repeats, and with repetition, the habit of aversion weakens. Instead of running from pain, you meet it directly and reshape it. This practice also cuts through ego. The ego thrives on separation, on protecting me from them. Tonglen dissolves that boundary. When you breathe in the suffering of others, you stop living as a fortress and begin living as an open field. The ego says, if I take in suffering, I will be destroyed. But practice reveals the opposite. When you open to suffering, you are not destroyed, you are expanded. Your capacity grows. What once felt unbearable becomes bearable. What once felt overwhelming becomes light. There is also a profound psychological effect. When you stop fearing suffering, your anxiety lessens. Much of human fear is not about pain itself, but about the anticipation of pain, the dread of it. Tonglen cuts this dread. By deliberately breathing in suffering, you train the mind to stop running. And when you stop running, fear loses its teeth. Negativity no longer rules by threat, because you have already faced it willingly. Practicing Tonglen also teaches the hidden strength of compassion. Compassion is not fragile, it is fierce. It has the power to take in what is unbearable and return healing. This is why the practice is often compared to the breath of a great bodhisattva, one who vows to liberate all beings. The bodhisattva breathes in the suffering of countless beings and breathes out infinite compassion. In this way, suffering is recycled endlessly into healing. Beyond the personal, Tonglen can be practiced for the world. You read of violence, injustice, despair. Instead of turning away in numbness, you breathe it in. You allow yourself to feel the weight that so many carry. On the out-breath, you release peace, relief, and healing energy. This does not solve problems outwardly, but it transforms your inner relationship. Instead of being paralyzed by the world's pain, you become an active participant in healing it energetically. This subtle shift changes not only you, but how you act in the world. The practice also dismantles pride. When you breathe in the suffering of others, you are reminded that you are not above pain. You share the same vulnerability as every being. This humbles the heart and opens it. And when you breathe out healing, you are reminded that your life has power, that even in silence, your breath can serve others. To practice Tonglen deeply, you must also let go of perfection. Some breaths will feel easy, others heavy. Some days the heart opens, other days it resists. This is not failure. Every breath is part of the training. Even resistance, when acknowledged, becomes material for transformation. You breathe in the resistance, you breathe out patience. In this way, even the obstacles become fuel. What makes Tonglen so radical is that it overturns the instinct to avoid negativity. Every other strategy seeks to escape pain. Tonglen faces it directly and uses it. In this way, nothing is wasted. Every sorrow becomes fuel for empathy. Every anger becomes fuel for clarity. Every fear becomes fuel for courage. Life stops being divided into good and bad, pleasant and unpleasant. Everything becomes workable. Over time, Tonglen reshapes the nervous system. The breath becomes a rhythm of courage. The mind becomes less reactive, less fearful. The heart becomes wider, more spacious. Negative energy still arises, but it no longer overwhelms. It is breathed in, transformed, breathed out. A continuous cycle of healing. This is the secret of Tonglen beyond compassion. It is a practice of recycling energy. Instead of trying to block negativity or destroy it, you learn to transmute it. Like a great wheel, the breath turns suffering into peace, over and over. This practice is not about martyrdom or self-sacrifice. It is about discovering the vastness of the mind, the capacity to face all things and not be broken. So let each breath become this alchemy. Inhale the pain, the heaviness, the darkness. Let awareness hold it, let it dissolve. Exhale light, healing, peace. Repeat, again and again. With each cycle, the weight you once feared becomes the strength you now embody. And in this transformation, negativity loses its power. What was once poison becomes medicine. What was once burden becomes gift. And you, through the simple act of breathing, become a channel of healing in a world that desperately needs it. Breath has shown itself as a bridge, a way of turning pain into healing, of making what was heavy into something that carries light. Tonglen teaches that energy need not be wasted, that even sorrow and anger can be reshaped into gifts. Yet there is another trap the mind falls into: the extremes of how we deal with emotions. Some cling to them fiercely, drowning in indulgence, while others bury them so deeply that they rot in silence. Both paths lead to suffering. The Buddha's wisdom cuts through these extremes with the teaching of the middle way, the path that neither rejects nor clings, but walks a steady ground where emotions are seen, felt, and released without chains. When emotions surge, the usual instinct is either to act them out or to shut them down. Acting them out, yelling, accusing, spiraling into blame, creates more harm and plants deeper seeds of karmic heaviness. Suppressing them, pretending they don't exist, locking them in the body, turns them into poison that leaks slowly through tension, anxiety, and despair. Both reactions come from imbalance. The middle way shows a third possibility: to let emotions flow through awareness without falling into either indulgence or suppression. This balance is not weakness or avoidance. It is the strength of staying steady while the fire burns. To practice the middle way with emotions is to acknowledge them fully. Yes, anger is here. Yes, sorrow is here, without becoming enslaved to them. It is to feel the body shake, the chest tighten, the tears rise, but to stay present enough not to lash out or deny. This requires discipline, but it also brings freedom, because the emotion loses its power when it cannot control your speech or actions. The Buddha himself discovered the middle way after years of extremes. He knew indulgence in pleasure led to craving, and he knew harsh self-denial led to weakness. Neither brought peace. Only when he abandoned both extremes and sat in balanced awareness did awakening unfold. The same principle applies to the inner life of emotions. To swing from overindulgence to suppression is to repeat the cycle of suffering. Balance is where the chain breaks. To walk this path, you must first see the cost of extremes. Indulgence in anger feels powerful in the moment, but afterward it leaves regret, broken trust, and karmic weight. Suppression of anger may keep the peace outwardly, but inwardly it festers, hardening into bitterness or exploding later in destructive ways. Indulgence in sorrow drowns you in despair, while suppression of sorrow numbs the heart, cutting off compassion. Both paths distort the truth of the emotion, turning it into a burden instead of a teacher. The middle way treats emotions as passing weather. When rain falls, you don't scream at it or pretend the sky is clear. You open an umbrella or stand still until it passes. Likewise, when anger arises, you don't let it dictate your words, nor do you deny it. You let it be present in awareness, you feel its heat, and you let it pass. The same with joy. You do not cling desperately, nor reject it out of fear. You experience it fully and allow it to fade when its time is done. Practicing this balance requires mindfulness. You must notice the first stirrings of emotion before they sweep you away. This noticing is not judgment but recognition. This is anger. This is fear. This is longing. Naming the emotion softly in your own mind creates space between you and the feeling. That space is the ground of the middle way. In that space, you can choose how to respond instead of being dragged by habit. Discipline of breath supports this balance. Breathing deeply and steadily when emotions rise gives the body a stable rhythm, reminding the nervous system that it does not need to spiral. Breath anchors you in the present, holding you steady while the wave of feeling crests and falls. Without breath, emotions pull you into their storm. With breath, you stand firm as the storm passes through. Another part of balance is compassion toward yourself. Many people believe emotions should be controlled or destroyed, and when they fail to do so, they add guilt on top of pain. The middle way teaches that emotions are natural. They arise, they fade. The goal is not perfection but balance. To treat yourself harshly for feeling anger or sorrow is to fall into suppression. To excuse every harmful action because of emotion is to fall into indulgence. Compassion means allowing yourself to feel without judgment, while also taking responsibility not to harm. Balance also requires patience. The mind is conditioned by years of habit. If you are used to suppressing, at first you may swing too far into indulgence. If you are used to indulging, at first you may swing too far into suppression when you try to change. The middle way is not reached in a single step, but through steady practice. Each moment of awareness brings you closer. Each time you pause before reacting, you strengthen balance. Each time you let an emotion flow without clinging or pushing away, you deepen freedom. There is also wisdom in seeing that emotions themselves are not enemies. Anger can reveal injustice. Fear can alert you to danger. Sorrow can open compassion. Joy can connect you with gratitude. But when any of these are indulged or suppressed, their wisdom is lost. The middle way allows the wisdom to shine without being distorted. By neither drowning in the emotion nor burying it, you receive its teaching and let it go. In relationships, this balance is transformative. When conflict arises, indulgence leads to harsh words. Suppression leads to cold silence. Both create distance. Balance allows you to acknowledge hurt without attacking, to express truth without cruelty. It allows listening without defensiveness, speaking without venom. Over time, this balance creates trust, because others feel your steadiness. They see that you are not controlled by extremes. The middle way also reveals itself in how you hold joy and pleasure. Clinging to joy creates craving, a desperate attempt to make it last. Rejecting joy creates numbness, a refusal to feel alive. Balance allows you to enjoy fully without attachment, to savor beauty, love, laughter, and let them pass without despair when they end. This frees you from both craving and emptiness. Practicing the middle way in emotions also shapes karma directly. Every time you avoid indulgence, you stop planting seeds of harm. Every time you avoid suppression, you stop planting seeds of inner poison. Instead, you plant seeds of clarity, patience, and wisdom. These seeds grow into a steady mind, a calm heart, a balanced life. This is how daily practice becomes liberation. The middle way is not a rigid formula. It is a living balance that shifts with each moment. Sometimes more expression is needed, sometimes more restraint. The key is awareness. Awareness shows you when you are leaning too far toward indulgence or suppression and brings you back to center. Like a walker on a path, you adjust step by step, always returning to balance. Over time, this path transforms how you see emotions entirely. They are no longer threats or temptations, no longer chains or weapons. They are movements of the mind, waves in the ocean, reflections in the mirror. You feel them fully, release them fully, and remain free. This freedom is not cold detachment, but a steady warmth, a clarity that can face all emotions without being ruled. So, as you carry forward, remember what breath has taught you in Tonglen. Transformation is always possible. Remember what karma has shown. Every reaction matters. Now let the middle way be your compass in the storms of emotion. Neither clinging nor denying, neither drowning nor numbing. Walk steadily, feel fully, release freely. In this balance lies the heart of freedom. Walking the middle way shows you how to stay steady between drowning in emotions and burying them. But balance is not only about what happens inside you, it also extends outward into how you see others. Much of human suffering comes not only from our own storms, but from the weight we carry against other people, the grudges, the anger, the resentment that never seems to leave. Even when the moment has passed, the wound remains, feeding bitterness day after day. It feels personal, It feels justified, and yet it poisons the one who carries it most. Here is where Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching of interbeing offers freedom. It shows that the walls between self and other are illusions, and when you see through those walls, resentment dissolves like mist under sunlight. Resentment thrives on separation. You tell yourself, this person harmed me, they are different from me, they are the enemy. From that thought, anger hardens into hatred. But interbeing teaches that nothing exists on its own. You are not separate from the one you resent. They are part of you, just as you are part of them. The air you breathe, the food you eat, the language you speak, all come from countless others. Even the person you resent is shaped by conditions beyond their control, conditions that touch you too. To see this truth is to feel the tight grip of hatred weaken. Consider resentment toward a parent. Perhaps they failed to give you love or protection. Interbeing reveals that they too were shaped by their parents, their struggles, their wounds. What they could not give you was not because you were unworthy, but because they had not received it themselves. Seeing this does not excuse harm, but it softens resentment. It shows that suffering flows through generations like a river, and by understanding it, you stop the current from continuing. The same is true in daily conflicts. Someone insults you, and resentment rises. But interbeing asks you to look deeper. Where did their words come from? Perhaps from insecurity, from their own pain, from conditions you cannot see. When you realize that their behavior is not born in isolation, your anger shifts. You see that they too are caught in causes and effects, just as you are. Hatred thrives on the illusion of choice in isolation. They chose to hurt me. Interbeing reveals that choices arise from conditions, and that recognition makes room for compassion where only bitterness lived before. Interbeing also reveals the futility of resentment. To hate another is to hate part of yourself. The line between self and other is thin. If you hurt your neighbor, you live in a weaker community. If you carry hatred toward your family, you poison your own heart. If you despise humanity, you despise the very fabric that sustains your life. Resentment, then, is self-harm disguised as justice. Interbeing strips away the disguise, showing that there is no true victory in holding on to anger. This truth is not abstract. You can see it directly. Look at a sheet of paper. In it is the sunshine that grew the trees, the rain that fed the roots, the logger who cut the wood, the teacher who taught you to read. Without the sun, the paper would not exist. Without the rain, no tree. Without the tree, no paper. Each thing contains everything else. Thich Nhat Hanh called this interbeing. And if even a sheet of paper holds the universe within it, how much more deeply are you connected to the people around you? Resentment collapses when you see that you and the one you resent are not two separate islands, but threads in the same fabric. To dissolve resentment through interbeing is not to deny pain. Hurt is real. Betrayal cuts deep. But holding on to hatred multiplies pain, while understanding transforms it. When you see that the one who hurt you is also suffering, that their harm was born of conditions, the sharpness of resentment softens. You may still protect yourself, still set boundaries, but the poison of hatred no longer runs through your veins. This shift requires practice. When resentment rises, pause and trace its roots. Ask, what conditions gave rise to this? Where did this person's action come from? Often, you will find a chain of suffering that stretches beyond them, beyond you, into a web of causes. The moment you see this, resentment loosens, because you realize there is no single enemy to fight. The enemy is suffering itself, and it is shared. Interbeing also invites gratitude as an antidote. When you look at someone you resent, instead of only seeing harm, you also see what they have given you, even indirectly. A parent who hurt you also gave you life. A rival who angered you also revealed your strength. A stranger who insulted you also taught you patience. This does not erase the harm, but it balances the view. Hatred narrows vision to only the wound. Interbeing widens vision to include the whole. Gratitude arises, and resentment loses fuel. This teaching also extends beyond personal resentment to larger conflicts between groups, nations, cultures. Wars are fueled by the belief that we are separate from them. Interbeing reveals that no side can exist without the other. The farmer in one land depends on the rains that pass over another. The worker in one nation depends on resources from another. The health of one people depends on the peace of all. When this truth is seen, hatred between groups becomes as senseless as one hand resenting the other. To practice interbeing daily, cultivate awareness of connection. When you eat, remember the hands that grew and harvested the food. When you breathe, remember the trees and oceans that create oxygen. When you look at another person, remember their hidden struggles and unseen joys. Each moment of awareness is a thread woven into understanding, and understanding is the undoing of resentment. The deepest fruit of interbeing is compassion. Compassion arises not from pity, but from recognition. Your pain is my pain. Your joy is my joy. Resentment cannot survive in this recognition, because to hate you would be to hate myself. To withhold forgiveness from you would be to imprison myself. Compassion is not softness but clarity. It sees the web that connects all beings and acts in harmony with it. Over time, interbeing reshapes the heart. Where once hatred felt justified, now it feels heavy and unnecessary. Where once resentment seemed permanent, now it seems like a cloud that drifts by. You realize that dissolving resentment is not a gift you give to others, but a liberation you give yourself. By releasing the illusion of separation, you release the burden of bitterness. So let this truth settle. Balance has taught you steadiness, but interbeing teaches you connection. To walk the middle way in your own heart is freedom, but to see that no being stands alone is love. When you breathe with this awareness, resentment cannot take root. You see yourself in all, and all in yourself. And in that vision, hatred melts into understanding, and understanding blossoms into peace. Seeing the web of interbeing loosens the chains of resentment, showing that no one stands apart, that every action is born from countless conditions. Yet even as this truth is known, another force still clings tightly, the sense of I, the hardened belief that there is a fixed self that can be harmed, insulted, or diminished. This is where anger takes root most deeply. The Buddhist teaching of non-self, anatta, reveals that what you call I is not a permanent entity but a flowing process. When this is seen clearly, the very foundation of anger collapses, because anger feeds on the illusion of a self that must be defended. Anger often begins with a story. They disrespected me, they betrayed me, they hurt me. Notice the repeated word, me. Without the sense of me, the insult would lose its sting. Non-self does not mean that you vanish or that your life has no value. It means that what you take to be solid identity is in truth a collection of shifting elements: body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, consciousness, all arising and fading moment by moment. When you cling to this bundle as I, anger ignites at every challenge. But when you see the bundle as impermanent and without a fixed owner, the fuel of anger weakens. Think of the body. It is called mine. Yet every cell is constantly changing. Skin sheds, blood flows, hair falls, organs replace themselves. 10 years ago, almost none of the physical matter you now call your body was the same. The body is a river, not a rock. If the body has no permanent core, then who is the I being insulted? The mind is the same. Thoughts appear and vanish. Emotions rise and fall. Perceptions shift from moment to moment. If anger defined the self, you would be angry forever. But anger comes, burns, and fades. If joy defined the self, you would be joyful forever, but joy too passes. Non-self shows that there is no fixed owner behind the changing stream. There is only the stream itself. When anger flares, it feels like a solid wall. But look closer, and you see it is built from fragile bricks. A memory, an expectation, a sense of self being threatened. Each brick is impermanent. Each brick is dependent on countless conditions. Remove even one, and the wall weakens. See through the illusion of solidity, and the wall collapses. This truth is liberating because it reveals that anger is not your essence. It is not who you are. It is an event, not an identity. When you forget this, you say, "I am angry," and the ego grips the emotion tightly. But when you remember non-self, you say, "Anger is present," and already the grip loosens. You shift from being the fire to simply witnessing its flame. The flame cannot burn the witness. The ego resists this teaching fiercely. Ego thrives on separation, on the belief that I must always be right, respected, and acknowledged. When any of these are threatened, anger arises as ego's shield. But non-self exposes the shield as empty. What is there to defend if there is no fixed I to be damaged? The insult strikes, but it strikes only air. The betrayal cuts, but it cuts only illusion. This is not passivity, it is clarity. Seeing non-self does not mean tolerating harm or avoiding boundaries. It means responding without the poison of ego. You can address injustice firmly, even fiercely, but without anger clouding the mind. Action taken without ego is clean, precise, and free from karmic residue. Action taken from ego multiplies suffering, even when justified. The Buddha taught that clinging to self is the root of dukkha, suffering. Anger is one of its strongest branches. When the sense of self is challenged, anger blossoms to protect it. But when self is seen as illusion, anger has nothing to protect. What remains is space, space to see clearly, to respond wisely, to let go. Consider this in daily life. Someone criticizes you harshly. Ego flares. How dare they? Don't they know who I am? Anger burns hot. But if you pause and recall non-self, the question changes. Who is this I being attacked? Is it the body? The body changes. Is it the mind? The mind changes. Is it the personality? The personality shifts with age, with mood, with memory. The I being defended cannot be found. And in that moment, anger weakens. The criticism may still sting, but it no longer defines you. Another example, resentment toward betrayal. Ego says, "I deserved better, they wronged me." This tightens into hatred. But non-self sees that I is not fixed, nor is they. Both are processes, streams of conditions flowing together and apart. The betrayal arises from conditions, their ignorance, their pain, their past. It is not an attack on a permanent me, because no such me exists. With this vision, bitterness dissolves into understanding, even if the wound remains. Non-self also transforms how you view others' anger. When someone lashes out, it is easy to take it personally, to feel attacked. But if there is no solid self in you, there is also no solid self in them. Their anger is not their essence. It is a temporary storm, born from conditions. Just as your anger does not define you, theirs does not define them. This view softens judgment and opens compassion. You see not an enemy but a being caught in illusion, suffering under the same delusion of self. The practice of non-self is not about erasing individuality. It is about loosening the grip of ego. The body still lives, the mind still thinks, the heart still feels. But the clinging to mine, me, and I is released. Without that clinging, emotions lose their sharpness. Anger becomes a passing cloud, not a permanent identity. Negativity becomes a ripple, not a prison. Daily practice makes this real. Each time anger arises, question it gently. Who is angry? Where is the self that must be defended? Look for it, and you will not find it. This searching itself is the practice. Over time, anger loses credibility. The ego tries to shout, "Protect me," but you see through the illusion, and the shout fades into silence. The fruit of this practice is freedom. Freedom not from emotion, but from enslavement to ego. Freedom to act without being consumed. Freedom to feel without being chained. When you no longer carry the burden of defending an illusion, your energy flows into clarity, compassion, and peace. So, as you continue, carry this truth with you. Resentment dissolves when you see into being, but anger itself dissolves when you see non-self. The ego is the root of its fire, and ego is nothing but illusion. When illusion fades, the fire finds no fuel. What remains is a vast openness, where even the sharpest insult cannot wound, and even the deepest anger cannot bind. In that openness, you are already free. The illusion of a permanent self is what gives anger its sharpest edge. When the ego is seen for what it is, only a shifting pattern of body, mind, and habit, the fire of negativity begins to lose its fuel. Yet knowing that emotions are not your essence does not mean they vanish instantly. They continue to appear, often with the same force, pulling at attention, demanding reaction. What is needed then is not only insight, but also a path of training, a way to tame and transform these wild forces without suppression or indulgence. Zen offers such a path through the ox-herding pictures, a series of parables that describe the journey of taming the mind. Though often spoken of in terms of spiritual awakening, they are equally powerful metaphors for working with emotions and finding liberation from their grip. The first of the ox-herding pictures depicts the search. The ox, a symbol of the unruly mind and the storms of emotion, has wandered into the wilderness. At this stage, negativity feels overwhelming. Anger appears as if it were an unstoppable beast, fear as if it were a shadow that cannot be escaped. The search represents the first step of awareness, the recognition that these forces exist and that they shape your life. Without awareness, the ox is invisible, and you are dragged unconsciously by its power. To search is to admit the mind is not yet free, and the work of training must begin. The second picture reveals the tracks. This is the moment when you begin to notice patterns in your emotions. Perhaps you see that anger always flares when your pride is touched, or that sorrow returns when certain memories surface. These are the footprints of the ox. By studying them, you begin to understand how negativity arises. This stage is crucial because it shifts emotions from being mysterious forces to being knowable processes. When you can trace their tracks, you are no longer entirely helpless. The third picture shows the ox itself. Here, you encounter emotion directly. You see anger as it rises, raw and powerful, no longer hidden. It is not easy to face. The ox resists, and the mind trembles. But this moment is essential, to meet the emotion fully, without turning away, without masking it. You learn that the ox is not infinite in power. It can be seen, acknowledged, and engaged with. This is the courage of presence, the willingness to look at what you fear inside yourself. The fourth picture depicts the struggle to catch the ox. Emotions are not tamed easily. Anger bucks, sorrow pulls, desire resists. The training requires discipline, patience, and effort. Here, meditation, mindfulness, and breath become the rope and halter. Each practice gives you a tool to steady the mind when the emotion tries to run wild. It is not about force or violence. To beat the ox is to harm yourself. Instead, you guide it firmly, returning again and again to awareness whenever it strays. In the fifth picture, the ox is gradually tamed. At this stage, emotions still arise, but they no longer dominate. Anger may spark, but it does not burn the whole forest. Fear may appear, but it does not paralyze. Through consistent practice, the ox learns to walk with you. Negative states are still present, but they are recognized quickly and guided back into balance. The struggle is less violent, and moments of peace begin to appear more often. The sixth picture shows the ox at rest. Here, the once wild mind has become calm, obedient not through suppression, but through understanding. Emotions still arise, but they are quiet, fleeting, no longer threatening. You can sit in silence without being dragged into storms. You can face insult without losing balance. This stage reveals the fruit of patience. Emotions are not enemies to be destroyed, but forces that, when understood, lose their destructive power. The seventh picture depicts returning home on the ox. Now the mind that once resisted becomes a companion. Emotions that once enslaved you become part of the path itself. Anger transforms into clarity, sorrow into depth, fear into vigilance. The ox carries you instead of resisting you. Negativity is no longer an obstacle but material for growth. The very energy that once harmed now serves. This is the true transformation, not to erase emotion, but to harness its power wisely. The eighth picture shows both ox and self disappearing. At this point, the sense of ego that clung to emotions is released. There is no longer me struggling with my anger. There is only awareness, spacious and free. The ox is not gone because it was defeated. It is gone because the separation between self and emotion has dissolved. Anger may still arise, but it is like a ripple on a vast ocean. It comes, it goes, it leaves no trace. The ninth picture is often depicted as a circle, symbolizing emptiness. Here, you rest in the direct experience of non-self and impermanence. Emotions are seen as empty, lacking permanence or solidity. They arise from causes and conditions. They vanish with causes and conditions. Nothing to cling to, nothing to resist. This is freedom from the cycle of attachment and aversion, the state where emotions no longer bind. The 10th and final picture shows returning to the world, often symbolized by a figure with a wide grin, carrying a sack, walking into the marketplace. This stage represents integration. The freedom found through taming the ox is not meant to remain in isolation. It returns to daily life, to relationships, to work, to community. The one who has walked this path meets the world with ease. Negativity may still appear in others, but it no longer triggers bondage within. Instead, joy, compassion, and humor flow naturally. Emotional liberation is not escape from life, but full engagement with it, without chains. When applied to emotional life, the ox-herding pictures provide a roadmap. They show that taming the mind is not an instant victory, but a gradual training. Each stage matters: searching, noticing, confronting, guiding, resting, transforming, dissolving, and integrating. To see emotions in this way removes the despair that they will never change. Just as the ox can be tamed, so too can anger, fear, and sorrow. This path also teaches humility. No matter how much progress is made, vigilance is needed. The ox may wander again, emotions may rise unexpectedly, but now you know the path. You know the stages. You know how to bring the mind back without panic or self-judgment. This is the real strength, not that negativity never appears, but that it never rules. The ox-herding parables also emphasize that emotional liberation is not about suppression. The ox is not killed, chained forever, or locked away. It becomes a companion, then disappears into spaciousness, then reappears as life itself. This mirrors the reality of emotions. They are not meant to be destroyed, but understood, integrated, and transcended. When this is done, they become sources of wisdom rather than suffering, Through this lens, anger becomes a teacher of boundaries, sorrow becomes a teacher of compassion, fear becomes a teacher of awareness, desire becomes a teacher of impermanence. Each negative state, once tamed, reveals a hidden gift. Emotional liberation does not come from avoidance but from walking alongside the ox until it leads you home. So let these images guide you. Let them remind you that the wildness of the mind is not permanent, that training is possible, that liberation is real. The ox may seem untamable now, but with patience, awareness, and steady practice, it becomes not an enemy, but a path. And when the ox disappears into the vastness of non-self, what remains is a life lived freely, fully, and without the chains of negativity. The path of the ox-herding pictures showed that emotions, once feared as uncontrollable beasts, can be tamed and transformed until they no longer bind you. But training the mind is not only about discipline and awareness, it also involves resonance, the way sound itself shapes the inner landscape. Long before modern science measured frequencies, ancient practitioners discovered that the voice carries power to shift states of mind and energy. In Buddhism, this wisdom took form in the practice of mantra. These sacred sounds are not mere words or cultural symbols. They are vibrations that penetrate the body, the mind, and even the subtle layers of energy where negativity often hides. Negativity is not only a thought or emotion, it settles into the body like tension in the muscles, like heaviness in the chest, like static in the mind. Left unaddressed, it becomes stuck, repeating in cycles. Mantras act like tuning forks. Their vibration shakes loose what has become rigid, dissolving blockages and creating flow. This is why chanting is not about blind repetition. It is about aligning your entire being with a frequency that lifts you beyond ordinary states. When you chant a mantra, the sound enters through the ears, but it also reverberates through the bones, the lungs, the nervous system. The body becomes an instrument. Just as a drum carries rhythm, your chest cavity carries the resonance of sound. Certain syllables, refined through centuries of practice, are designed to open specific channels of energy. The vibration itself is the cleansing. Where negative energy clings like dust, mantra shakes it free. The syllable Om, perhaps the most well-known mantra, illustrates this power. It is said to contain the essence of all sounds. When chanted, its vibration travels from deep in the belly to the crown of the head, harmonizing the entire body. The low resonance clears heaviness from the chest, the middle tones balance the mind, the higher vibrations lift awareness into spaciousness. To chant Om is not just to repeat a word, but to tune your being to the rhythm of the universe. Another example is the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, central in Tibetan Buddhism. Each syllable is said to purify a different aspect of negativity, pride, jealousy, desire, ignorance, greed, hatred. Chanting this mantra repeatedly is like washing the mind with waves of sound. The repetition does not dull the senses, it sharpens them, bringing clarity where once there was confusion. Negativity weakens because its vibrational pattern cannot survive when replaced by the steady rhythm of mantra. Modern science now confirms what ancient practitioners already knew. Sound alters brainwaves, heart rhythms, and nervous system activity. Chanting mantras slows the breath, lowers blood pressure, and activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural state of rest and repair. On a psychological level, the mind, often restless and scattered, begins to focus on the rhythm of sound. This focus replaces endless inner chatter with a single vibration. Instead of carrying the weight of 1,000 thoughts, you ride one current of sound into stillness. But the deepest power of mantra is not physical or psychological alone. It is energetic. Every thought, every word carries vibration. Negativity has its own frequency, tight, heavy, discordant. Mantras create harmony. They overlay the discord with resonance until the disharmony dissolves. This is why practitioners speak of mantras as cleansing. They reset the inner vibration, dissolving stuck patterns and restoring flow. There is also the collective power of chanting. When a group chants together, the vibrations multiply, weaving into a field of resonance that is stronger than any one voice. Negativity dissolves faster in such fields, not because of numbers alone, but because collective sound amplifies harmony. Monasteries have preserved this practice for centuries, not for performance but for purification of mind and environment alike. Mantra practice also trains attention. When you chant, the mind may wander, but the rhythm pulls it back. Each syllable is an anchor, preventing the mind from drifting into anger, worry, or regret. Over time, the mantra carves grooves in consciousness. Instead of defaulting to negative thought patterns, the mind returns to the mantra's resonance. Negativity loses ground, not through suppression but through replacement. For those burdened by grief, mantra can feel like a lifeline. The heaviness in the chest vibrates with the sound, loosening as the chant continues. For those consumed by anger, the sharp edges soften as the vibration deepens. For those trapped in anxiety, the rhythm of syllables steadies the breath, calming the nervous system. Each condition responds to the resonance in its own way, but all are touched by it. Mantras also bypass the limits of language. Negative self-talk thrives on words, "I am not enough," "I am broken," "I cannot change." These phrases cut deep. Mantras, though formed of syllables, are not bound to meaning in the ordinary sense. Their power lies in sound itself. This is why, even without understanding Sanskrit or Tibetan, chanting still works. The vibration cleanses where thought cannot reach. Another layer of mantra practice is intention. The vibration itself carries power, but when combined with sincere intention, the effect deepens. To chant with the wish to release negativity, to heal, to open compassion, infuses the sound with direction. Intention shapes energy like a sculptor shapes clay. The mantra is the tool, intention is the hand, and together they form a new inner reality. For emotional healing, mantra can be used in practical ways. When anger rises, chanting a calming mantra steadies the heart. When sadness lingers, chanting a mantra of compassion softens despair. When fear overwhelms, chanting a protective mantra restores courage. Over time, these practices create associations. The mind learns to shift from negativity to clarity each time the mantra begins. Silent repetition of mantra also has power. You may not always chant aloud, but repeating the sound mentally still creates subtle vibrations. The mind becomes filled with the rhythm, leaving no space for toxic chatter. Silent mantra can be carried into daily life, walking, working, resting, turning ordinary moments into opportunities for cleansing. Over long practice, the mantra itself begins to echo without effort. Just as a song lingers in the mind after hearing it, a mantra repeated thousands of times begins to chant itself. This is called japa in Sanskrit, the repetition that ingrains vibration so deeply it becomes second nature. At this stage, negativity has little room to root because the inner field resonates continuously with harmony. Importantly, mantra practice is not about escape. It is not meant to cover pain with sound. It is meant to bring pain into resonance, to shake loose what is stuck and restore balance. This requires sincerity and patience. At first, the chant may feel mechanical, but with time, the body and mind surrender to the vibration, and the cleansing begins to feel natural. Mantras also connect practitioners to lineage. Each chant has been spoken for centuries, carried by countless voices. To chant is to join this stream, to align your vibration with a current that has purified minds for generations. This collective energy strengthens individual practice, like stepping into a river that already flows strongly. The liberation that comes from mantra is subtle but profound. Negativity no longer feels solid. It vibrates, shifts, dissolves. The mind becomes less sticky, less prone to clinging. The body feels lighter, the heart feels open. Even the environment around you changes, because the resonance of mantra does not stop at your skin, it radiates outward, influencing the field of those near you. So let mantra be more than sound. Let it be vibration that cleanses, frequency that heals, resonance that liberates. Each chant is a wave moving through you, breaking apart what is stuck, opening space for clarity. With practice, negativity no longer dominates, because its discord cannot survive in the harmony of mantra. The voice becomes the instrument, the body becomes the chamber, and the heart becomes the source of sound that sets you free. The resonance of mantra shows how vibration can loosen negativity, how sound itself can reset the energy of the mind and body. Yet even as the voice carries healing, there is still a deeper root that must be addressed: the way we cling. Negativity often lingers not because of the pain itself, but because of the refusal to release it. Memories are held tight, stories repeated endlessly, wounds reopened again and again. The Buddha offered a direct medicine for this habit: the truth of impermanence, anicca. To see that everything, pain, joy, memory, identity, arises and passes, is to loosen the hand that clings. Letting go does not mean erasing the past, but recognizing that nothing can stay fixed. And in this recognition lies freedom. Clinging is the habit of the mind that insists, this must remain, this must not change. It attaches to pleasure, hoping it will last, and it attaches to pain, reliving it endlessly, as if keeping it alive protects against it. Both attachments create suffering, because life moves regardless of desire. To see impermanence clearly is to stop fighting reality. When the truth of change is fully accepted, memories no longer bind. They are acknowledged as waves that once rose and fell, not as chains that must be carried forever. Painful memories are particularly heavy because they feel permanent. A betrayal, a loss, a humiliation, all are replayed as though frozen in time. But impermanence reveals that the memory itself is not solid. Each time it is recalled, it is slightly different. The image shifts, the emotions around it change, the body reacts differently. Memory is a living process, not a fixed object. By seeing this, you loosen the illusion that the past is unchanging. What you cling to is already slipping away. Impermanence also transforms how you see grief. When someone you love is gone, the ache feels endless. Yet the very pain shifts day by day, sometimes sharp, sometimes dull, sometimes absent. Even grief is not permanent. Knowing this does not erase sorrow, but it prevents despair. You see that no feeling is eternal, that time itself carries healing. This realization becomes a refuge. The storm will pass, because all storms pass. The Buddha compared life to a river, always flowing, never the same from moment to moment. To cling to one drop is to miss the movement of the whole. Painful memories are drops already carried downstream, yet the mind insists on holding them still. This resistance creates suffering. Letting go means stepping into the river's truth. Everything moves, everything changes, nothing is fixed. Impermanence also applies to the self. The me who was hurt in the past is not the same as the me sitting here now. Your body has changed, your mind has shifted, your life has moved. To carry resentment against the past is to cling to a version of yourself that no longer exists. When you see that the self is as impermanent as every other phenomenon, the weight of old wounds begins to dissolve. One practical way to work with impermanence is mindfulness of breath. Each inhale arises and passes. Each exhale arises and passes. The breath cannot be clung to. It teaches in every moment that life is movement, not stasis. When painful memories arise, returning to the breath reminds you that even this thought is impermanent. It comes, it goes, like the rise and fall of breathing. Impermanence also teaches humility. Every victory fades, every loss softens, every identity shifts. To hold too tightly to pride or shame is to misunderstand reality. By releasing both, you find balance. Pride does not last, shame does not last. What remains is the flow itself, steady and unstoppable. Another layer of practice is seeing impermanence in nature. The falling leaf, the shifting clouds, the changing seasons, all are teachers. When you look at a flower, you know it will wither. When you see the sunset, you know it will fade. Yet knowing this does not make the beauty less, it makes it more precious. The same is true for experiences in life. Their impermanence makes them meaningful. Painful memories lose their sting when seen through this lens. They too were moments passing through, not eternal marks. Letting go through impermanence does not mean forgetting. It means holding memories lightly, as part of the flow. You do not deny what happened, but you stop carrying it as if it were fixed forever. You honor the moment and allow it to rest in the river of time. This is true healing, not erasing the past, but freeing yourself from the illusion that it still binds you. Impermanence also dissolves fear of the future. Just as painful memories change, so too will future pains. Anticipated suffering rarely arrives as expected, and when it does, it transforms quickly. By remembering that no state lasts, you reduce the fear of what is to come. Anxiety loses power because even the worst moments will pass. The wisdom of impermanence also transforms how you relate to joy. When happiness comes, you savor it fully without clinging. You know it will pass, but instead of despairing, you appreciate it more deeply. This balance prevents the bitterness that arises when joy fades. You learn to welcome both arrival and departure with the same calm heart. For those who carry trauma, impermanence offers a lifeline. Trauma tells the body and mind that the past is frozen, that the pain is eternal. But through mindfulness, you begin to notice change even within the trauma. The memory is not the same every time it arises. The body responds differently on different days. This recognition breaks the illusion of permanence, and slowly the grip loosens. Impermanence also heals resentment. When you see that the person who harmed you is not the same now as then, hatred softens. They too have changed, shaped by new conditions. Even if they repeat harmful actions, they are still impermanent beings, shifting constantly. To cling to resentment is to cling to a fixed image that no longer exists. By seeing change in them as well as yourself, you release the weight of hatred. The teaching of impermanence is not meant to be abstract. It is meant to be lived. Each moment, notice what arises and passes. Notice the thought, the breath, the sound, the feeling. Train the mind to see impermanence everywhere. Then, when painful memories arise, you recognize them as the same pattern, arising, passing, not lasting. The deepest fruit of impermanence is peace. When you stop clinging to what must change, suffering ends. You no longer fight the flow of life. You rest in its movement, trusting that nothing binds forever. Pain softens, joy deepens, fear lessens. Letting go becomes natural because you see that holding is impossible. So let impermanence be your medicine. Let it remind you that memories, no matter how painful, are not chains but waves already receding. Let it teach you that the self you defend is always shifting, never fixed. Let it free you from fear of loss and bitterness of past harm. When you see that everything changes, you stop clinging. And when you stop clinging, the art of letting go becomes the art of living freely. Impermanence reveals that clinging is the root of suffering, that no memory, no pain, no joy is fixed. To see this truth is to loosen the grip of the past and soften fear of the future. Yet there remains another force that fuels negativity in every moment, the restless fire of craving. Even when you know that everything changes, craving insists that you must hold on, that you must chase what pleases and fight what hurts. This endless hunger keeps the mind burning, and it was this fire that the Buddha addressed in one of his most powerful teachings, the Fire Sermon, the Aditta Pariyaya Sutta. In that teaching, the Buddha declared that all is burning, the eye is burning, the ear is burning, the tongue, the body, the mind, all are burning with the fire of craving, with the fire of aversion, with the fire of delusion. This was not poetry but diagnosis. He pointed out that suffering is not caused simply by what we see, hear, or feel, but by the way craving latches onto each experience. Every sense contact becomes fuel for the fire when craving is present. To understand this is to understand why negativity continues to arise even after we know that emotions are impermanent. The fire has not been extinguished because craving is still feeding it. Craving takes many forms. It is the desire for pleasure, for recognition, for certainty. It is also the desire to avoid pain, to escape discomfort, to erase what feels unbearable. In both directions, grasping and resisting the fire grows hotter. Negative energy thrives in this fire. Anger burns when craving insists that things must go your way. Envy burns when craving insists you must have what another has. Fear burns when craving insists on security in a world of change. Even sorrow deepens when craving insists the past should have been different. Without craving, experiences are simply experiences. With craving, they ignite into suffering. The Fire Sermon teaches that the senses themselves are not the problem. Seeing, hearing, touching, thinking, these are natural. The fire comes from the attachment, the insistence that each contact must satisfy desire. When the eye sees something beautiful, craving clings. And when the eye sees something unpleasant, craving resists. The same with sound, taste, thought. Each becomes fuel when craving takes hold. This is why mindfulness is central. It allows you to notice sense contact without clinging, to experience the moment without adding fire. Negative energy is strongest when craving and ignorance work together. Ignorance tells you that pleasure can last forever, that pain should not exist, that self is solid and must be defended. Craving builds on this ignorance, turning illusion into fuel. The result is a cycle of frustration, anger, and despair. To break the cycle, you must see clearly. Pleasure fades, pain changes, self is not fixed. When this clarity is present, craving loses power. The fire weakens because there is nothing left to burn. The Buddha did not teach renunciation as denial but as liberation from fire. To let go of craving is not to reject life but to stop demanding from it what it cannot give. Life gives moments, not permanence. When you accept this, the need to grasp or resist fades, and with it the energy of negativity. The fire goes out, and what remains is coolness, peace, clarity. One way to apply the Fire Sermon in daily life is to notice when craving arises in small ways. The craving for the conversation to go exactly as you want, the craving for your body to feel strong every day, the craving for others to treat you with constant kindness. When these cravings are unmet, negativity arises, frustration, disappointment, resentment. By seeing the craving behind the emotion, you address the root rather than the surface. You realize it was not the event itself, but the fire of desire that created the suffering. Another practice is reflection on the impermanence of sense contact. When a sound arises, notice how quickly it fades. When a taste is savored, notice how fleeting it island. When a thought arises, notice how it vanishes. Each reflection reminds you that craving is futile, because what you cling to cannot stay. Over time, the mind learns not to grasp, not to resist. The fire grows weaker with every act of letting go. Craving also fuels comparison. You see another succeed, and craving insists you must match or surpass them. This breeds envy, which burns like acid in the heart. By recognizing that envy is craving disguised, you can release it. Their success does not diminish you. The craving to measure yourself against others creates negativity. Letting it go creates peace. The fire sermon also applies to fear. Fear arises when craving insists on certainty. The mind demands a guarantee that health will remain, that loved ones will stay, that plans will succeed. But life cannot promise this. Fear grows because craving fights impermanence. To release craving is to release the need for certainty, and fear loses its grip. In relationships, craving often appears as expectation. You crave constant affection, agreement, or understanding. When unmet, anger and resentment rise. To see craving behind these emotions is to open space for compassion. The other person is not responsible for satisfying endless desire. By loosening craving, you free both yourself and them from unnecessary fire. The practice of meditation is a direct application of the fire sermon. When sitting, countless sensations arise, aches, itches, restless thoughts. The craving to move, to escape discomfort, to chase pleasant states is constant. Training in stillness reveals the fire of craving directly. By remaining present, you watch the craving rise and fall, refusing to fuel it. Over time, the fire weakens, and you experience the coolness of equanimity. Burning out negativity is not about force, but about understanding fuel. Anger cannot continue without craving. Fear cannot continue without craving. Sorrow cannot deepen without craving. By cutting the root, the fire dies naturally. The Buddha called this nibbana, literally cooling, the extinguishing of the flame. This is not annihilation, but liberation, the end of burning. Living the fire sermon means carrying this awareness into each moment. When joy arises, you savor it without clinging. When pain arises, you feel it without resisting. When thoughts arise, you see them without feeding them. Life continues, but without fire. The senses still function, the heart still feels, but negativity has no fuel. This is the coolness the Buddha described, a life lived without burning. So let the fire sermon guide you. See where craving fuels your suffering. Notice how every negative state feeds on desire. Cut the fuel and the flame dies. Without fire, the mind rests. Without fire, the heart opens. Without fire, the energy that once burned you becomes light, warmth, and clarity. This is the liberation found not in escape, but in extinguishing the fires of craving where they begin. The fire sermon revealed that everything is aflame with craving, and that it is this fire which turns ordinary experience into suffering. To see the fuel is to begin to extinguish the flame, leaving the coolness of peace. Yet the practice of cooling the fire is not only found in sitting or silent contemplation. There are moments when the body itself must move, when the feet must touch the ground, when every step becomes medicine. Walking with awareness is not ordinary walking. It is a moving purification, a way to release heavy emotions, to cleanse the mind through rhythm and presence. This is mindful walking, a practice that turns something simple into a profound ritual of healing. Walking has always been more than transportation. From the earliest days of monastic life, practitioners walked mindfully through forests, villages, and fields, using each step as meditation. When the mind is restless, sitting may feel impossible. The body seeks movement, and the heart seeks release. Walking meditation provides both. It channels the energy of the body into a rhythm that steadies the mind, allowing emotions that feel stuck to flow again. Heavy emotions often lodge in the body. Grief makes the chest heavy, Anger tightens the jaw, anxiety quickens the breath. When the body moves without awareness, these tensions remain. But when you walk with mindfulness, each step becomes deliberate, each breath aligned, each movement infused with presence. The body no longer carries the weight unconsciously. Instead, it begins to release it, step by step, into the earth. The ground itself becomes a partner in this practice. Each step connects you to the solidity of the earth, reminding you that stability is always beneath you. As your feet press down, the earth takes what you release, the frustration, the sorrow, the tension. This is not symbolic but felt directly. The act of walking mindfully becomes a physical way of grounding, of letting the weight of negativity sink into something vast enough to hold it. Breath synchronizes with steps in this practice. You may take one step with each inhale, one step with each exhale, or slow the pace to several steps per breath. This rhythm unites body and mind. The scattered energy of restless thoughts begins to align with the steady beat of walking. The breath anchors awareness, the feet ground it, and together they form a rhythm that calms turbulence. Walking meditation also transforms the relationship to the present moment. Heavy emotions thrive on stories. Anger replays the past, fear imagines the future, sorrow clings to what is gone. But mindful walking cuts through these stories. When your attention rests on the step, on the contact between foot and ground, the mind has no space for endless narration. Each step is a return to now. With enough steps, the stories loosen, and the emotions tied to them begin to dissolve. One of the strengths of mindful walking is its accessibility. You do not need silence, special clothing, or a meditation hall. You can practice in a garden, along a path, even in a hallway. Wherever you place your feet with awareness, the practice is alive. And because it engages the body, it often feels more approachable when the mind is agitated. Sitting may feel suffocating, but walking provides movement, giving the restless energy a channel to release. The practice also teaches patience. Unlike ordinary walking, which is driven by destination, mindful walking has no goal other than presence. You do not walk to arrive, you walk to walk. This shift is itself purification, because so much suffering arises from the constant urge to be elsewhere, to hurry, to achieve. By walking slowly, you train the mind to release craving for outcome and rest in the step itself. This release naturally detoxifies emotions, which are often fueled by dissatisfaction with where you are. Mindful walking can also be practiced with specific intentions. If anger is present, each step can be a step of releasing anger into the earth. If sorrow is heavy, each step can be a step of offering compassion to yourself. If fear is strong, each step can affirm safety in the present. In this way, walking becomes ritual, each step a prayer, each movement a cleansing act. The physical repetition reinforces the intention, engraving it into the body and mind. The body benefits in other ways as well. Movement stimulates circulation, clears tension, and activates the parasympathetic nervous system. The rhythm of walking calms the heart rate, reduces stress hormones, and balances the nervous system. Emotional detox is not abstract, it is embodied. The body and mind are not separate, and by calming one, you calm the other. Walking meditation also opens the senses. As you walk slowly, you notice sounds, colors, textures, and scents that ordinary speed hides. This sensory presence softens emotional weight because it draws you into direct contact with life instead of the stories of the mind. The sight of leaves moving, the sound of birds, the feel of wind all become reminders of impermanence and renewal. Nature itself becomes a mirror of release, showing that nothing stays stuck. Another aspect of this practice is its communal form. When groups walk mindfully together, the shared rhythm creates harmony. The energy of the group supports each member, and the collective presence magnifies the detoxifying effect. This is why retreats often include walking meditation as central practice. It transforms not only individuals, but the atmosphere itself. Mindful walking also cultivates gratitude. Each step is a reminder that you can move, that your body supports you, that the earth sustains you. Gratitude arises naturally from awareness of these simple truths. Gratitude, in turn, neutralizes negativity, because the heart cannot cling to bitterness when it is filled with appreciation. Over time, walking meditation changes the way you move through daily life. You begin to walk with awareness even when not formally practicing. Trips to the store, walks to the bus, even steps around your home become opportunities to return to presence. This continuous awareness prevents emotions from piling up unnoticed. Instead, they are released regularly, step by step, before they can harden into heaviness. Mindful walking also deepens insight. As the mind quiets with each step, clarity arises. You begin to see the roots of your emotions more clearly. Perhaps anger was not about the insult itself, but about pride. Perhaps sorrow was not only about loss, but about resistance to change. These insights come naturally, not forced, as the mind settles into rhythm. Emotional detox then goes beyond release to understanding, transforming patterns at their root. The practice also connects you to compassion for others. As you walk, you can dedicate each step to someone in pain. You breathe with them, walk with them, carry their burden in your intention. This shifts the focus from your own weight to the shared human journey. In doing so, your own negativity softens, because compassion expands the heart beyond self-centered suffering. Ultimately, mindful walking is not only about removing negativity, but about cultivating joy. Each step can be a step of freedom, a step of wonder. As the weight lifts, lightness takes its place. The body feels lighter, the mind clearer, the heart more open. Walking becomes celebration, not escape. So let each step become a purification. Let each contact with the ground release what you no longer need. Let each breath in rhythm with your walk bring calm. Mindful walking is not just exercise, it is healing in motion. With steady practice, the heaviness of emotions dissolves, and what remains is clarity, gratitude, and peace carried with you wherever your steps lead. Mindful walking shows that release is possible step by step, that the very act of moving with awareness cleanses the weight of emotions and restores clarity. But walking lightly on the earth is not the final aim of the path. Freedom is never meant to remain only within the self. The great question arises, what do you do with the space and strength that appear once negativity has dissolved? Buddhism answers with the Bodhisattva ideal, the vow to take your own pain, your own struggles, and transform them into service for others. Instead of being consumed by wounds, you turn them into fuel for compassion. Instead of letting anger, sorrow, or despair rot within, you recycle them into actions that relieve the suffering of those around you. The Bodhisattva is not a distant saint or a myth locked in old scriptures. It is a living possibility in every heart. The Bodhisattva feels pain deeply, but instead of letting it close the heart, they allow it to expand the heart's capacity to hold the pain of others. In this way, personal suffering becomes a bridge of understanding. When you have walked through grief, you can hold the hand of another grieving without fear. When you have known anger, you can see through the anger of others without judgment. When you have carried despair, you can sit beside someone in despair without turning away. This is the transformation of poison into medicine. The Bodhisattva ideal rests on the recognition that all beings share the same conditions. The sorrow that you think is yours alone is echoed in countless lives. The anger that rises in you has risen in others. By touching your own pain honestly, you realize that suffering is universal. From this recognition, compassion arises naturally, and compassion, when acted upon, becomes service. Service does not always mean grand actions. It can be as simple as listening without interruption, offering a kind word, or helping with daily needs. What makes it bodhisattva service is the intention behind it, the vow to turn your energy outward for the benefit of others. The very energy that once fueled negative states is redirected. The heat of anger becomes the warmth of protection. The depth of sorrow becomes the tenderness of empathy. The restlessness of fear becomes the alertness to guard others from harm. The bodhisattva path also prevents healing from becoming self-centered. It is possible to use meditation, silence, and ritual only as a way to avoid the world. But the bodhisattva refuses to withdraw permanently. They step back into the marketplace, into relationships, into communities, carrying with them the clarity gained in practice. Their presence itself becomes a form of healing. This path requires courage, because turning pain into service is not easy. The instinct is to avoid pain or to seek revenge for it. The bodhisattva does the opposite. They face it, transform it, and offer the result as a gift. It is like taking a burning coal and using it to light a lamp instead of throwing it at another. The coal still burns, but its energy becomes illumination. There is also discipline in this practice. Pain, if left unchecked, easily falls back into negativity. The bodhisattva must remain vigilant, constantly transforming rather than clinging. Each moment of anger is a chance to protect rather than harm. Each moment of grief is a chance to comfort rather than collapse. Each moment of fear is a chance to guide rather than retreat. Discipline is what makes the transformation consistent, what prevents the vow from becoming empty words. The bodhisattva ideal also reveals that suffering itself can become meaningful. Pain is not wasted if it becomes the source of compassion. What once felt like meaningless hardship becomes a teacher that equips you to serve. This does not romanticize suffering or seek it out, but it honors the possibility that even suffering can be transformed into benefit. In daily life, this path can be practiced in countless ways. A parent who has struggled with anger may use that experience to guide their children with patience. A person who has known loneliness may reach out to others who feel isolated. Someone who has faced injustice may dedicate themselves to fairness and protection for the vulnerable. Each act channels personal experience into service. The bodhisattva vow is radical because it extends beyond personal liberation. Even when personal freedom is within reach, the bodhisattva chooses to remain engaged until all beings are free. This is not a literal promise of endless delay, but a symbol of endless compassion. It reminds you that true liberation is inseparable from the well-being of others. Transforming pain into service also prevents bitterness. Without transformation, suffering hardens into resentment. Why me? But when suffering becomes service, it shifts into purpose. Let this help me guide others. The same wound that once narrowed the heart now expands it. The same struggle that once isolated you now connects you. This transformation does not erase personal healing. Serving others while neglecting yourself leads to exhaustion. The bodhisattva path includes care for your own mind and body, because only a steady flame can light other lamps. In this way, self-care and service are not opposites but partners. Each sustains the other. The bodhisattva ideal also invites creativity. Service need not follow one form. Some write, some teach, some build, some comfort. Some simply live with such kindness that their presence inspires. The key is not the form, but the intention, turning negative energy into compassionate action. Whatever your skill, whatever your path, pain can be transmuted into benefit for others. Over time, this path creates resilience. When new suffering arises, you no longer see it only as burden, but as potential. You ask, how can this be used? How can this serve? This question itself shifts the experience. Negativity does not spiral because you are already seeking its transformation. Pain becomes less frightening because you know it can be turned into light. The Bodhisattva path also widens perspective. Instead of seeing your own suffering as the center of the universe, you see it as one drop in an ocean of shared struggle. This recognition does not belittle your pain but places it in context. And from that context, compassion grows. You realize that to serve others is also to serve yourself, because the boundaries between self and other are illusions. So let this teaching enter your heart. Mindful walking shows how to release your own weight, but the Bodhisattva ideal shows what to do with the strength you gain. Pain no longer chains you because you use it as fuel for compassion. Negative energy no longer poisons you because you recycle it into service. This is the Bodhisattva path. To carry your own wounds not as curses but as tools for healing others, to live not only for yourself but for the freedom of all. In this, pain is not wasted, it becomes the ground of love, and love becomes the path to liberation. The Bodhisattva path shows that pain need not remain locked inside. It can be reshaped into compassion, guiding your hands and words toward the healing of others. Yet there is another layer of suffering, one far less visible. Even as you dedicate yourself to service, hidden residues remain, stored deep within the subconscious. Old fears, unhealed wounds, and unspoken guilt linger in the unseen corners of the mind. These shadows often rise in dreams, where the usual defenses are lowered and truth seeps through. Tibetan Buddhism offers a powerful practice for meeting this hidden realm, dream yoga. More than lucid dreaming, it is a discipline of awareness carried into the night, a way of transforming sleep into a path of liberation and of cleansing negativity at its deepest roots. Dream yoga begins with the recognition that the mind does not sleep in silence. It continues to weave images, stories, and emotions through the night. These dreamscapes are not meaningless. They are mirrors of the subconscious, reflecting desires, fears, and attachments that are often ignored during waking hours. When you dream of anger, of loss, of danger, these are not random events. They are the echoes of unresolved patterns. If left untouched, they continue to shape your waking life in subtle ways. Dream yoga offers the possibility of entering these realms with awareness so that the negativity hidden there can be released. The first step is cultivating lucidity. This means training the mind to recognize, even while dreaming, that it is dreaming. At first, this may seem impossible, but with practice, it becomes natural. Simple techniques such as questioning reality during the day, observing the shifting quality of thoughts, or focusing on the illusory nature of experiences plant seeds for lucidity at night. When awareness follows into sleep, the dream becomes a field of practice. In this state, you are no longer a passive victim of subconscious images. You can engage them, question them, and transform them. When negativity appears in a lucid dream, the usual instinct is to flee or fight. But dream yoga teaches the opposite. To face it directly, to see it as projection of the mind, to dissolve its power through awareness. A frightening figure that chases you is not an external enemy, but an embodiment of fear itself. By turning to face it, even embracing it, the fear dissolves. What was once nightmare becomes liberation. Each encounter weakens the hold of subconscious negativity, because the mind learns that even its darkest creations are empty. This practice does not remain confined to dreams. The lessons learned at night echo into waking life. When anger arises during the day, you recall how dream anger dissolved when faced directly. When fear appears, you remember that the monster was only mind. Slowly, the boundary between waking and dreaming blurs, and all experiences are seen as transient, insubstantial, subject to awareness. Negativity loses ground because its illusions are exposed. Dream yoga also trains flexibility of perception. In dreams, you may fly, change form, walk through fire without harm. These experiences remind the mind that reality is more fluid than it appears. When carried into waking life, this flexibility undermines rigid patterns of thought. Negativity thrives on rigidity. I must always be this way. Things can never change. Dream yoga shows directly that change is always possible, even in the most convincing illusions. Another aspect of dream yoga is using the dream state to cultivate positive qualities. Just as negativity arises in dreams, so can compassion, clarity, and wisdom. By consciously generating these states in dreams, you reinforce them in waking life. The subconscious, once a reservoir of hidden pain, becomes a reservoir of healing energy. Each dream becomes an opportunity to plant seeds of awakening. This practice also connects to the Buddhist understanding of death and rebirth. Sleep is often described as a small death, and dreams as a glimpse of the intermediate state. By training awareness in dreams, you prepare the mind for transitions, including the ultimate transition at the end of life. The ability to remain aware in dreams strengthens the ability to remain aware in the bardo, the state between death and rebirth. In this way, dream yoga not only cleanses negativity, but also prepares the mind for liberation beyond this life. To practice dream yoga requires discipline in daily life. The mind that is scattered during the day will be scattered in dreams. Mindfulness, meditation, and reflection on impermanence sharpen awareness so that it can carry into sleep. Preparing for sleep becomes ritual. Setting intention, calming the breath, focusing on awareness as you drift into slumber. Each night becomes an opportunity to enter the hidden mind with clarity. Dream yoga also reveals how deeply interconnected waking and dreaming are. Negativity suppressed during the day often erupts at night. By addressing it in dreams, you lighten its load in waking life. Conversely, by living mindfully during the day, your dreams grow clearer and less burdened by confusion. The two realms feed each other. Practicing in both creates a cycle of purification. For those burdened by trauma, dream yoga offers profound healing. Traumatic memories often resurface in nightmares, trapping the mind in repetition. In lucidity, the dreamer can change the script. Instead of reliving the trauma, they can confront it, comfort the younger self, or dissolve the image entirely. Over time, the nightmares lose their grip, and the subconscious begins to heal. This is emotional detox at its deepest level. Dream yoga also opens the heart. Meeting figures in dreams with compassion, even those that appear threatening, teaches unconditional acceptance. When you embrace the shadow in dreams, you learn to embrace the shadow in yourself and in others. The subconscious becomes less frightening, more integrated. Negativity loses its hiding place because you no longer fear to look at it. Ultimately, dream yoga reveals that all experiences, waking or dreaming, are dreamlike. They arise, they pass, they have no solid core. To see this deeply is to live with freedom. Negativity, once seen as heavy and real, is recognized as fleeting appearance. By training in dreams, you train for life itself. Every moment becomes an opportunity for awareness, every challenge a chance for transformation. So carry this practice with you. Let the night become not only rest but path. Let the dreams that once troubled you become teachers. Let the subconscious, with all its hidden shadows, become a field of liberation. Dream yoga shows that nothing is too deep, too hidden, too dark to be touched by awareness. Even in the depths of sleep, light can shine, and when it shines there, it shines everywhere. Dream yoga shows how even in sleep the mind can be trained, how hidden fears and buried wounds can be transformed into freedom when awareness touches them. Yet what happens in the night is inseparably tied to what we create in the day. The words we speak, the tone we use, the way we shape sound in conversation all leave traces that ripple into our subconscious. Harmful words do not vanish after they are spoken. They echo inside, feeding guilt, regret, and inner conflict. Helpful words also linger, strengthening clarity and compassion. This is why the Buddha placed right speech, samma vaca, at the heart of the Noble Eightfold Path. It is not only about avoiding harm to others, but also about reducing the seeds of negativity within yourself. Right speech is more than simply avoiding lies. It is the discipline of aligning language with truth, kindness, purpose, and harmony. Each word becomes an action, planting karmic seeds. Words of anger plant anger in yourself before they ever reach another. Words of slander poison your own mind first. Words of harshness tighten your own heart. To live with right speech is to cleanse not only the space between people, but the space within your own consciousness. The first aspect of right speech is truthfulness. Lies create tension. When you speak against reality, the body carries the stress of holding contradiction. The mind must remember the lie, protect it, defend it. This is an inner conflict that feeds anxiety and guilt. Speaking truth removes this burden. Even difficult truths, when spoken with clarity, create alignment between inner and outer life. That alignment is itself healing. Negativity thrives in distortion. Truth weakens its ground. But truth alone is not enough. Right speech also requires kindness. A truth spoken with cruelty cuts as deeply as a lie. The discipline is to speak in ways that do not cause unnecessary harm. This softens the speaker as well as the listener. Words of kindness calm the nervous system, reduce inner tension, and prevent the cycle of regret. Even when strong words are needed, they can be spoken with respect. Kindness in speech heals the speaker first, because it prevents the heart from carrying the poison of harshness. Another aspect of right speech is refraining from gossip and divisive talk. Gossip may feel harmless, but it trains the mind to dwell in judgment and comparison. Each word spoken against another reinforces negativity inside yourself. Over time, this habit corrodes trust not only between people but within your own heart. To abstain from gossip is to keep the mind clear, free from the clutter of endless comparison. It is a form of inner silence, a refusal to feed the fires of envy or resentment. Right speech also avoids idle chatter that wastes energy. Endless words without purpose scatter the mind. Silence, when words are unnecessary, preserves clarity. This does not mean withdrawing from conversation, but choosing words carefully. Purposeful speech channels energy outward without draining the inner reservoir. Negativity finds less foothold when the mind is not cluttered by meaningless noise. Practicing right speech transforms relationships. Conflict often escalates not from actions themselves, but from words spoken in reaction. A single harsh phrase can trigger days of resentment. A single compassionate phrase can dissolve tension. When you commit to speech that heals rather than harms, negativity cannot accumulate in the same way. Each conversation becomes an opportunity to create peace outside and inside. Right speech also includes listening. To listen fully is to offer space for another's pain without judgment. This reduces negativity within yourself because it prevents the reflex of defensiveness. When you listen, instead of preparing to argue, your mind softens. The discipline of listening is itself a form of right speech, because silence in service of understanding is as powerful as words. Daily practice of right speech begins with awareness. Before speaking, pause. Ask, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Is it timely? This pause prevents impulsive reactions. It breaks the habit of letting anger spill into words. The moment of reflection itself reduces negativity because it interrupts the cycle of reactivity. Right speech also extends to the way you speak to yourself. Internal dialogue shapes mood and identity. Harsh self-criticism is a form of wrong speech directed inward. To replace it with truthful but compassionate speech is to heal inner conflict. Saying, "I failed, but I can learn," is right speech to yourself. Saying, "I am worthless," is wrong speech that creates suffering. The discipline applies equally within as without. Practicing right speech is not suppression. It does not mean avoiding difficult conversations or pretending everything is pleasant. It means choosing words that are honest, clear, and aimed at resolution rather than destruction. Sometimes this requires firmness, but firmness need not be cruel. The difference lies in intention. Words spoken with the intention to heal reduce negativity. Words spoken with the intention to wound feed it. Over time, right speech creates trust. Others know your words align with truth and kindness. This reduces conflict in relationships, which in turn reduces inner turmoil. When you are trusted, you do not carry the weight of suspicion or hidden agendas. This simplicity is itself liberation. Right speech also has a meditative quality. Each word becomes mindful. Speaking slowly, carefully, with awareness anchors you in the present. This mindfulness dissolves negativity because it prevents careless harm. It turns ordinary conversation into practice, weaving meditation into daily life. The karmic effect of speech is profound. Words plant seeds not only in others but in yourself. A lifetime of kind words creates a mind naturally inclined to compassion. A lifetime of cruel words creates a mind heavy with bitterness. The choice of each phrase shapes long-term patterns. This awareness brings urgency to practice, because every word matters. In communities, right speech builds harmony. When members commit to avoiding gossip, lies, and harshness, trust grows. Negativity cannot thrive in such an environment because there is no fuel. The same principle applies within the community of your own thoughts. When inner dialogue follows right speech, harmony arises inside. The discipline of right speech also teaches restraint. The urge to respond quickly often creates harm. By holding back words until clarity arises, you train patience. This patience reduces reactivity, which is the root of much negativity. Silence becomes a tool of wisdom rather than avoidance. In the broader sense, right speech reminds you that language shapes reality. How you describe yourself, others, and the world determines how you experience them. Words of fear create a fearful world. Words of hope create possibility. By practicing right speech, you cleanse perception itself. The world becomes less threatening, less divided, because your words no longer reinforce division. So let right speech be your practice. Let it guide how you speak to others and how you speak to yourself. Each word can either poison or heal, tighten or release, darken or illuminate. By choosing speech that is true, kind, purposeful, and mindful, you reduce negativity at its root. What you give through words returns to you. Speak peace, and peace grows within. Speak with care, and care becomes your nature. In this way, the practice of right speech becomes a direct path to healing inner conflict and creating freedom in daily life. Right speech shows how language can be medicine, how words spoken with truth and kindness heal not only those who hear them, but also the one who speaks. Yet, even when silence is chosen, even when careful words are practiced, anger can still rise in the heart. It arrives suddenly, like a storm, shaping thoughts before you can stop it, pressing against the chest with a weight that feels immovable. Speech may be restrained, but the inner fire still burns. To heal this fire, the Buddha offered another path, the practice of loving kindness, metta bhavana. It is not sentimental, not blind optimism, but a deep training of the heart that gradually dissolves hostile patterns until they can no longer dominate the mind. Metta begins with intention. It is the deliberate choice to cultivate goodwill, first toward yourself, then toward others, and eventually toward all beings without limit. Anger thrives on division, me against you, self against other. Loving kindness removes division by expanding the field of care until nothing is excluded. This does not mean approval of harmful actions. It means refusing to let hatred poison the heart. In metta bhavana, you learn that anger cannot survive where goodwill is steadily nurtured. The practice begins simply, often with phrases silently repeated. May I be safe, may I be healthy, may I live with ease. These are not wishes for luxury or perfection, but basic intentions for well-being. The words anchor the mind, but it is the feeling that matters. At first, the warmth may be faint. For some, it feels forced or hollow, but with repetition, the heart responds. The warmth grows, and anger toward yourself begins to soften. This is crucial, because much hostility projected outward has its roots in self-judgment. Once the seed of goodwill is stable, it is extended to others. You bring to mind someone you love easily, offering them the same phrases. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. The natural warmth you feel for them strengthens the practice. From there, you expand to neutral people, those you barely notice in daily life, and finally to those you dislike or even resent. This is the most challenging stage, where the true power of metta bhavana reveals itself. To wish safety and ease for someone who has harmed you feels impossible at first. Yet it is precisely this practice that weakens the root of anger. The transformation happens gradually. Hostile patterns are not erased in a single session, but with consistent practice, the grip loosens. Each repetition plants a seed of kindness where once hostility grew. Over time, these seeds sprout into habits of mind. Instead of anger automatically rising when you think of someone, compassion begins to appear. The face that once triggered resentment now reminds you of their shared humanity. The anger does not vanish by force. It dissolves naturally, displaced by kindness. Metta also reshapes the body. Anger contracts the chest, quickens the pulse, hardens the jaw. Loving kindness softens these reactions. As you practice, the body begins to associate certain faces and situations, not with tension, but with warmth. This bodily shift is crucial, because emotions live as much in the body as in the mind. By training the body through metta, you weaken the physical roots of anger. The practice also reveals that anger is rarely about the present moment. It is often a replay of old wounds, projected onto current situations. Metta cuts through this by anchoring you in direct goodwill. When you wish well even for those who hurt you, you refuse to carry the past into the present. You acknowledge the pain but choose not to let it dictate your heart. This is true freedom, not erasing memory but refusing to let memory control love. Metta bhavana also heals relationships. Anger isolates, creating walls between people. Loving kindness opens doors. Even if the other person does not change, your own openness changes the dynamic. Hostility no longer fuels hostility. Sometimes reconciliation becomes possible, sometimes it does not. But either way, you are free from the chains of hatred. Another fruit of this practice is patience. When anger arises, metta gives you a tool to meet it. Instead of reacting blindly, you can pause and send kindness to yourself first, then to the situation. This pause interrupts the cycle of reactivity. The anger still burns, but the fuel is not added. With practice, the pause lengthens, and anger weakens faster. The discipline of metta also guards against subtle forms of hostility, irritation, cynicism, contempt. These may seem small compared to rage, but they erode peace just as surely. Loving kindness addresses them too, because it trains the mind to respond with care, even in small interactions. Over time, kindness becomes the default response, not anger. Importantly, metta bhavana is not about passivity. Wishing someone well does not mean allowing harm to continue. Boundaries remain necessary, but the energy behind action changes. Instead of acting from hatred, you act from compassion. Instead of punishment, you seek protection. This shift makes action more effective because it is not clouded by rage. The practice also extends beyond individuals. When you send metta to all beings, may all be safe, may all be healthy, may all live with ease, you dissolve the sense of separation that fuels large-scale hostility. Anger between groups, communities, even nations, thrives on the illusion of difference. Metta reveals the shared wish for well-being that unites all. In this recognition, hostility loses its foundation. For inner healing, metta is equally powerful. Many carry anger toward themselves, anger for mistakes, failures, weaknesses. This self-directed hostility poisons the mind silently. By practicing metta for yourself, you begin to forgive. The phrases, repeated gently, train the mind to release self-hatred. Over time, you begin to believe them, that you too are worthy of safety, health, and ease. This self-kindness becomes the ground from which kindness toward others naturally flows. Scientific studies now confirm what practitioners have known for centuries. Regular metta practice reduces stress, increases positive emotions, and strengthens resilience. Brain scans show that regions associated with empathy and emotional regulation grow more active. The ancient practice aligns with modern understanding. Loving kindness rewires the brain away from hostility and toward compassion. The challenge of metta is persistence. At first it feels unnatural, even false. Anger is deeply ingrained, and goodwill toward enemies feels forced. But the practice is like watering seeds. The first drops may seem to vanish into dry soil, but with steady watering, green shoots appear. With time, a garden of kindness grows where only thorns once stood. The deepest insight of metta is that love is not a feeling to wait for, but a practice to cultivate. Feelings follow practice, not the other way around. By training the heart in goodwill, you create the conditions for love to arise naturally. Anger cannot dominate in such a heart, so let metta bhavana be your antidote. When anger rises, meet it not with suppression but with kindness. When hostility lingers, soften it with repeated phrases of goodwill. When self-hatred whispers, counter it with compassion. Over time, hostility dissolves, replaced by warmth that extends without limit. This is not weakness, but the deepest strength, the ability to face anger and transform it into love. In this way, metta bhavana becomes not only a meditation, but a way of living, a path that dissolves anger at its root and replaces it with a heart unbound. Loving kindness teaches that even the fire of anger can be softened, reshaped into warmth that frees both yourself and others. But the question remains, what do we do with the mud itself, the heaviness, the wounds, the very suffering that seems to hold us down? Instead of avoiding it or waiting for it to vanish, Buddhist tradition offers one of its most powerful images, the lotus. The lotus does not bloom in clear water. It grows from thick mud. Its roots are buried in darkness, yet it rises unstained, its petals opening in the sunday. This image is not only about purity but about transformation. It shows that suffering is not an obstacle to awakening, but the very ground from which enlightenment emerges. The mud represents difficulty, pain, confusion. No one escapes it. Life delivers loss, betrayal, illness, disappointment. To hope for a life without mud is to deny reality. The lotus teaches a different approach. Do not curse the mud, use it. Just as the lotus draws nutrients from the soil that looks filthy, you can draw wisdom and strength from your suffering. The very conditions that seem to drag you down can become the foundation of growth. This metaphor is not abstract. Consider grief. When someone you love dies, the pain feels unbearable. Yet from that pain often comes a deeper appreciation of life, a greater tenderness toward others who suffer. Grief, when met with awareness, becomes compassion. The mud of loss nourishes the lotus of love. Without the mud, the flower cannot bloom. The same is true with anger. Left unchecked, it poisons. But when understood, it reveals where your deepest values lie. Anger at injustice shows your love of fairness. Anger at cruelty shows your care for kindness. When anger is transformed, it becomes energy for protection and service. The mud of rage becomes the fuel for the lotus of clarity. The lotus also symbolizes resilience. Mud is heavy, thick, resistant, yet the lotus stem grows through it, seeking light. In the same way, your mind and heart can rise through obstacles. Each challenge faced with awareness strengthens resilience. Each time you refuse to drown in negativity, you grow taller. What seems like suffocation becomes training. The mud does not disappear, but you learn to move through it. Another layer of the metaphor is the purity of the petals. Even though the lotus grows in mud, its blossoms open clean, unstained. This teaches that your essence is not dirtied by suffering. Negativity may cover the mind, but awareness itself remains pure. Just as water rolls off the lotus leaves, harmful thoughts can roll off awareness when you do not cling to them. You are not defined by the mud you rise from. The lotus also embodies impermanence. The bloom opens, shines, and fades. Each stage is part of its beauty. In the same way, your growth is not a single event but a continuous unfolding. Suffering transforms into insight, not all at once but petal by petal. Patience is required because each petal opens in its own time. The mud of impatience itself becomes fertilizer for patience. In practice, using the lotus as metaphor means shifting how you see your struggles. Instead of asking, "Why me?" you ask, "What can this teach me? How can this be used?" This reframing turns suffering into material for growth. Every disappointment becomes a chance to strengthen equanimity. Every wound becomes a reminder of compassion. The mud is no longer your enemy but your teacher. The lotus is also communal. One flower may bloom alone, but more often many rise together, creating beauty and unity. In the same way, suffering connects you to others. Everyone has mud. When you share your struggles honestly, you help others see that they are not alone. Compassion deepens in this recognition, and collective healing becomes possible. This metaphor is also protective against despair. When life feels heavy, it is easy to believe nothing good can come from it. The lotus says otherwise. Even in the darkest mud, growth is possible. Even when life feels suffocating, the possibility of rising exists. The mud itself contains the nutrients. Your suffering is not wasted. It holds the seeds of wisdom. The lotus also teaches balance. The roots remain in the mud, but the blossom opens in the light. In the same way, you cannot reject your suffering or deny it. You remain rooted in it, but you do not stay buried. You acknowledge the mud while also reaching for clarity. This balance prevents both denial and despair. In meditation, the lotus can serve as visualization. When painful memories surface, you can see them as mud. Instead of pushing them away, you imagine them feeding the growth of a lotus rising within you. Each breath nourishes the stem. Each moment of awareness opens a new petal. Slowly, the flower blossoms, reminding you that beauty and suffering coexist, that one can transform into the other. The lotus also has cultural and symbolic layers across Buddhism. In Mahayana tradition, the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara is often depicted seated on a lotus, representing compassion arising from the world's suffering. In Pure Land Buddhism, the faithful are said to be reborn in lotus blossoms, symbolizing awakening beyond impurity. Across traditions, the lotus remains a reminder: do not reject the mud, for it is the ground of enlightenment. This teaching applies to daily life in simple ways. When conflict arises, instead of drowning in anger, you can ask what the lotus in this moment might be. Perhaps clearer communication, perhaps patience. When illness strikes, instead of despairing, you can look for the lotus, perhaps gratitude for life, perhaps compassion for others in pain. The shift is not denial but transformation. The lotus also encourages humility. No flower rises without mud. No one is free of suffering. If you bloom, it is not because you escaped difficulty, but because you worked with it. This prevents pride and strengthens empathy. You do not judge others for their mud, because you know your own. Ultimately, the lotus shows that enlightenment is not found outside of suffering, but through it. The mud is not an obstacle to awakening, it is the very condition for it. Without sorrow, you would not know compassion. Without impermanence, you would not learn to let go. Without loss, you would not value presence. The petals of wisdom unfold only because of the mud beneath them. So let the lotus be your guide. When negativity weighs you down, remember that it is not wasted. Let it feed your growth. Let it strengthen your resilience. Let it soften into compassion. The mud of your life is the soil of awakening. And when you rise through it, unstained yet nourished by it, your heart opens like the lotus, radiant, free, and rooted in the very suffering that once felt unbearable. The lotus shows that suffering is not wasted, that the very mud you wish to escape becomes the soil of awakening. Yet this teaching leads to an even deeper realization in the heart of Buddhism. Suffering itself, what the Buddha called dukkha, is not simply a burden, but a doorway. Most people treat suffering as a curse, something to deny, escape, or numb. But the Dharma teaches that dukkha is the very teacher you cannot avoid, the guide that points to liberation if you are willing to listen. To see dukkha as enemy is to miss its gift. To see it as teacher is to open the path to freedom. Dukkha is often translated as suffering, but its meaning is wider. It refers to the unsatisfactoriness of all conditioned existence. Even pleasure, when clung to, becomes dukkha because it fades. Even health becomes dukkha because it declines. Even life itself, when held as permanent, becomes dukkha because it ends. This is not pessimism but clarity. To name dukkha is to name reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. The Buddha's first teaching after awakening was the truth of dukkha. He did not begin with bliss or enlightenment but with suffering, because unless you see it clearly, you cannot move beyond it. Dukkha is the wake-up call. Without it, you remain asleep in illusions. The sting of pain, the ache of loss, the frustration of impermanence. These are the knocks on the door. Liberation begins when you stop ignoring the knocks. The doorway opens when you turn towards suffering instead of away from it. When grief arises, instead of drowning or numbing, you look directly. You ask, what is this feeling? How does it move in the body? What thoughts feed it? In that looking, you discover that grief, like all things, changes. It has no fixed core. This insight weakens clinging, and with less clinging comes freedom. The very grief that seemed unbearable becomes the path to letting go. The same is true with anger. At first it feels like solid fire, but when examined, it reveals conditions: wounded pride, unmet expectations, fear of being diminished. By seeing these roots, you recognize that anger is not essence, but process. The fire cools as understanding grows. Anger becomes teacher, showing you where ego hides. Without anger, you would not know where to look. Dukkha also teaches compassion. When you suffer, you realize firsthand what others endure. This recognition softens the heart. Instead of judgment, there is empathy. Instead of isolation, there is connection. Without suffering, compassion would be shallow. Through suffering, it becomes real. In this way, dukkha becomes the ground of love. The practice of mindfulness is the method of entering this doorway. Mindfulness does not erase pain, it makes it visible. When you sit with discomfort instead of resisting, you see its impermanence. The ache shifts, the thought dissolves, the emotion fades. This seeing loosens attachment. Each time you practice, dukkha teaches impermanence more directly than any text. Dukkha also points to the emptiness of self. Much of suffering comes from the thought, "This is happening to me." But when you observe closely, you see that pain is sensation, thought is thought, feeling is feeling. The me that owns them cannot be found. This insight turns dukkha into doorway, the illusion of self weakens, and freedom expands. Another layer of dukkha is subtle, the restlessness of never being fully satisfied. Even in joy, the mind whispers, "Let this last," or "What comes next?" This craving is itself suffering. By seeing it, you learn that lasting happiness cannot come from conditions. The doorway opens to a different kind of peace, the peace of non-clinging, where satisfaction is not dependent on external change. The Buddha described 3 kinds of dukkha: the suffering of change, and the suffering of conditioned existence. The suffering of suffering is obvious: pain, illness, loss. The suffering of change is subtler. The discomfort of knowing pleasure will end. The suffering of conditioned existence is deepest, the fact that anything dependent on causes is unstable. To see these layers is not to despair, but to recognize where not to build your house. You learn not to cling to what shifts, but to rest in awareness itself, which is unshaken. Dukkha also reveals karma. Repeated patterns of suffering show where unskillful actions have taken root. If anger returns again and again, it points to a karmic habit. If sorrow clings, it shows where attachment is strong. These patterns are not punishments but teachers, revealing where work is needed. By addressing them, you reshape your path. Meditation on dukkha brings humility. Everyone suffers, rich or poor, strong or weak, wise or foolish. This universality dissolves pride. It also dissolves envy, because you see that even those you admire face their own hidden pain. Dukkha equalizes all beings. In this recognition, compassion deepens and hostility weakens. The doorway also teaches resilience. Each time you endure suffering with awareness, you discover strength. What once felt impossible becomes bearable. This resilience is not numbness but clarity, the knowledge that pain arises, stays for a time, and passes. You no longer fear it as much. Without fear, suffering loses much of its sting. Dukkha, as doorway, also means that every negative state can be transformed. Fear teaches impermanence. Anger teaches emptiness of self. Grief teaches compassion. Desire teaches the futility of clinging. Each state becomes material for wisdom. Nothing is wasted. What once chained you now guides you. The Buddha compared this process to firewood becoming ashes. The same fire that destroys wood also produces warmth. In the same way, the fire of dukkha, when met with awareness, becomes the light of wisdom. Without the burning, there would be no illumination. In practical life, this means meeting difficulties as practice. When traffic delays you, notice frustration. Let it teach patience. When illness weakens you, notice attachment to strength. Let it teach impermanence. When relationships strain, notice craving for control. Let it teach letting go. Each moment of dukkha is a lesson waiting to be seen. This approach does not glorify suffering. Buddhism does not seek pain for its own sake. It recognizes that pain is unavoidable but insists it can be used. Liberation comes not from avoiding dukkha, but from transforming your relationship to it. You no longer say, "Why me?" You say, "What is this teaching me?" That shift is the doorway. The fruit of this practice is freedom. Suffering no longer crushes because it no longer surprises. You expect it, you accept it, you use it. This changes the quality of life profoundly. Joy is savored more fully because you do not cling. Pain is endured more lightly because you do not resist. The mind rests in balance, no longer tossed by extremes. So let dukkha be your doorway. Do not curse it, do not deny it. Let it knock and open the door. Let it teach impermanence, compassion, humility, resilience. Let it strip away illusion and reveal the ground of freedom beneath. In this way, suffering becomes not the end, but the beginning, the teacher that leads you, step by step, into liberation. Dukkha revealed itself as a doorway, teaching that suffering, when faced with awareness, becomes the ground of wisdom and compassion. But if suffering is the doorway, then what waits on the threshold? It is often Mara the tempter, the whisperer, the embodiment of fear, craving, and doubt. The Buddha met Mara many times, not only on the night of his awakening but throughout his life. Mara was not a demon to be killed, but a teacher to be recognized. Each encounter revealed that liberation does not come from destroying the dark voices within, but from seeing them clearly, even befriending them. For what you resist fiercely often grows stronger, but what you meet with understanding loses its power. Mara represents everything that binds the human mind: the lure of desire, the paralysis of fear, the weight of anger, the fog of doubt. These forces do not vanish with practice. They often appear more sharply when the path deepens. The Buddha's example shows that freedom does not mean never meeting Mara again. It means recognizing him whenever he appears, bowing to him with awareness, and refusing to be deceived. The first lesson in befriending Mara is recognition. Most people live unaware of the subtle voices that guide their actions. You're not good enough. You need more. You cannot change. These are Mara's whispers. When unrecognized, they control you. But when you say, "This is Mara," the spell breaks. The thought is no longer truth, but apparition. Recognition itself is power. The Buddha's encounters with Mara illustrate this clearly. On the night of awakening, Mara unleashed fear, doubt, and desire. The Buddha did not attack or flee. He simply touched the earth as witness, acknowledging the reality of his path. By doing so, Mara's power dissolved. The lesson is profound. Awareness is the antidote, not battle. To befriend inner demons means to sit with them without hostility. Anger arises. Instead of pushing it away, you notice its texture, its heat, its stories. Fear arises. Instead of fleeing, you breathe with it, acknowledging its presence. Doubt arises. Instead of collapsing, you name it as doubt. This friendliness is not indulgence. It is the wisdom of non-resistance. By allowing Mara to sit at your table, you rob him of his ability to control the room. This approach transforms your relationship with negativity. Instead of constant war with yourself, you cultivate peace. The energy once wasted on suppression becomes energy for awareness. The hostility toward your own mind softens, replaced by curiosity. What does this anger teach me? What does this fear reveal? Inner demons become messengers rather than enemies. Befriending Mara also requires humility. You accept that doubt, craving, and fear will arise again and again. They are part of the human condition. Pretending otherwise only strengthens denial. By admitting, "Yes, Mara visits me too," you join the Buddha himself, who acknowledged Mara's presence long after enlightenment. This humility prevents pride and deepens compassion for others who struggle. Another key lesson is impermanence. Mara's visits are never permanent. Each temptation, each fear, each doubt arises and fades. By remembering impermanence, you can endure the storm without despair. The demon that feels overwhelming in one moment dissolves naturally in the next. To befriend Mara is to remember that he too is subject to change. This practice has direct benefits for daily life. When criticism strikes, Mara may whisper anger or shame. By recognizing it, you pause instead of reacting. When temptation arises, Mara may promise happiness through grasping. By seeing it as Mara, you remember its emptiness. Each recognition is a step of freedom. Befriending Mara also dissolves shame. Many people believe they should not feel fear or desire if they are practicing sincerely. When these emotions arise, they judge themselves harshly. This double layer of suffering feeds Mara further. But when you see Mara as natural, shame disappears. You stop expecting perfection and instead practice awareness. This honesty heals because it aligns you with reality instead of illusion. The story of the Buddha inviting Mara to tea captures this spirit. Instead of resisting, he welcomed him. By doing so, Mara's power waned. You can do the same. When negative thoughts appear, you say, "Hello, Mara, I see you." This gentle acknowledgement turns enemy into guest, and guests eventually leave when treated with calm presence. In psychological terms, this is integration. Repressed fears and desires do not vanish. They return in distorted ways. By welcoming them, you integrate them into awareness. They lose destructive power because they are no longer hidden. The light of attention dissolves their shadow. This practice also fosters compassion for others. When you see your own Mara clearly, you understand that others face the same. Their anger, greed, or fear is not personal malice, but their Mara at work. This recognition softens judgment. Instead of meeting hostility with hostility, you respond with understanding. Compassion replaces condemnation. Befriending Mara also prepares the mind for greater challenges. Life will always bring loss, change, uncertainty. Mara will visit in these moments. But if you have practiced meeting him calmly, you will not be overwhelmed. You will say, "I know you. Sit here if you must, but I will not follow your commands." This resilience is true strength, the strength not of conquest, but of clarity. The deepest insight is that Mara is not separate from the path. He is the shadow that makes the light visible, the obstacle that sharpens wisdom. Without Mara, there would be no practice of patience, no cultivation of courage, no need for compassion. By befriending Mara, you recognize that even inner demons are part of the journey toward awakening. They are not mistakes, but materials for liberation. So let Mara be your teacher. When fear arises, see it. When desire whispers, name it. When doubt clouds, acknowledge it. Do not fight, do not flee. Sit with it, breathe with it, and remember, Mara's power lasts only as long as you believe his illusions. By befriending him, you strip him of control. And in that friendship, the very demons that once bound you become guides toward freedom. You've traveled through the deepest wisdom of the Buddha's path tonight. Emptiness that shows emotions are not solid, the mirror mind that reflects without clinging, the hidden alchemy of mudras, the medicine of noble silence, the karmic weight of micro-reactions, and the breath of Tonglen that turns pain into healing. You've walked the middle way between extremes, dissolved resentment through into being, unmasked anger with the truth of non-self, and followed the ox-herding journey of taming the mind. You've felt the cleansing power of mantra, the release of impermanence, the cool clarity of the fire sermon, and the gentle detox of mindful walking. You've seen the Bodhisattva path transform pain into service, entered the realm of dreams to face hidden shadows, and discovered the power of right speech to calm inner storms. You've softened anger with metta, risen like the lotus from the mud, turned dukkha into a doorway of freedom, and even learned to bow to Mara himself, befriending the demons within. Every teaching carried one message: negative energy is never permanent, never ultimate, never stronger than awareness. With practice, everything you once feared can become fuel for peace, compassion, and awakening. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What teaching tonight touched you the most? Was it the lotus rising from the mud, or the simple strength of walking meditation, or maybe the fierce courage of Tonglen? Share your reflections in the comments. I read every one. And if you found value in these teachings, don't forget to subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss the next journey into wisdom. Together, step by step, breath by breath, we can build lives free from the weight of negativity, rooted in clarity and blooming with peace.